Hello and welcome to Cinema to the Letter. This episode is that indie known as The Secret of NIMH. On Cinema to the Letter, we break down the very nature of cinema, letter by letter. For each episode of a season topic, we cover six films that fit a C for classic, I for indie, N for new, E for egregious, M for masterpiece, and A for atypical. Because who doesn't love an acronym, am I right? I am Thomas, but that is not important. I will say this. My name is not unknown in these woods.
Hello, I am Bryan, and I'm gonna be honest. I had not seen this movie before, and I never put together that NIM was the acronym for what it stands for, which is crazy.
We'll get to it. We'll get to it right here, Brian. But we're not the only ones here. We have another escaped rat from NIM who's joining us today. You might recognize him if you're a patron, Cinema to Letter patron, patreon.com/cinema number two letter. Where on Marco Polo we had this guy as a guest. He's a big animation buff in general. Welcome, Mr. Joey Hamilton to the show.
Hello! Happy to be driving onto main feed on a rotoscoped, looking cool as hell tractor.
My favorite kind of tractor is the rotoscoped kind.
Especially when it's crawling with diva shrews and heartwarming motherly mice.
Yeah, Ford won't do that shit for you.
Yeah.
But welcome, Joey. When we had you on Marco Polo, we talked a lot about sort of like your love of animation on the Adult Swim side of things. But
Yes.
I'm curious with animated films, where did it really spark for you? Maybe with like the moment where you kind of started realizing it was just not just like, oh, I'm a kid who likes cartoons, and went into like, oh, I love animation as an art form. Did anything spark that for you? A movie, a TV show, anything like that?
Oh my goodness. Well, I grew up during the Pixar boom. So, in terms of CG animation, it was definitely like that incredible track record of Pixar's initial output, from Toy Story through Toy Story 3-ish. Like I was born in 96, so all those movies were coming out when I was exactly the right age to see them. And then in terms of traditional 2D animation, I mean, I grew up with a lot of the Disney classics on VHS. I'm particularly a great lover of the Xerox era of the late 60s and 70s, which shares a lot of DNA with the film we're talking about today in terms of its artists.
Including artists involved. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I mean, I've probably seen The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh 50 times in my life.
Incredible movie.
Incredible movie. It's probably my favorite 20th century Disney, to be honest. I'm an extremely big fan of that film. I feel like it was when I was the age to be, have animated movies marketed to me, I was seeing all of them. And then as I got older, I was just like, I still love this. I'm not going to stop loving animation just because I'm aging out of its target demographic. And I just started expanding my worldview and enjoying all different types and styles. And at this point now, I got a nice little role as an animation buff in my internet communities, and I quite enjoy that. So I love it dearly.
Yeah, I had a similar thing, but I was ashamed that I liked cartoons still. But I would still go to like the Pixar movies. I'd be like, "Oh, I'm bringing like a little cousin with me." Sure, that's what I'm doing. That's why I'm seeing this because it's the kids involved, not because I love this art necessarily. Because I'm a man, I don't need to do that. Of course, it's interesting, especially with the indie side of things. We were going back and forth about this, Brian, right? About an eye for indie. This is one of the more interesting ones to kind of like nail down. Because, like, especially if we want to go beyond, like, the modern era where, like, an indie animated movie in theory is easier to do now. In theory. Obviously, in practice,
Yeah.
there's, like, so much left to it. But especially the farther you go back, like, it's more and more limited. Especially, like, this movie that we're talking about today feels especially crucial because it's, like, this indie movie for animation at a time when, like, there was one house that did it, pretty much.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, certainly the implementation of digital animation, whether that be CG or whether that be like somebody using Toon Boom or Flash or whatever in the modern day, democratized animation to a great deal. So this movie in particular is staggering that on the budget it had, it looks this good. And I know those animators had to work tooth and nail and bone to make it happen this way. But I mean, it's a testament to their passion. I wish it had not led to uh, serious financial difficulty, which I'm sure we'll talk about when we get
Well,
into the history.
oh, there's so much to talk about there. But
Oh,
Brian,
yes.
how did you feel,
Yeah,
especially about landing on this one ultimately?
we had a bit of a difficulty, I think. Same with like the classic, where if you go back to a certain point, like there are animated movies from, the 50s, 60s, 70s, but very rarely, and it's a bit difficult. And so with indie, yeah, like it's easier to get animated movies. I mean, like something like Flow, which won in Best Animated Film, was made
Totally.
with like what Blender, I believe it's called,
Yep.
and
Right.
just like yeah, so it is easier, but yeah, like going back, it is much more difficult. And I think for this particular movie, we landed on Don Bluth, who I was not as familiar with, at least like, I think we'll get more into this in the movie, but like I had not seen any of his movies as like a full person. Like I remember seeing a few of them when I was like a little kid.
Mhm.
Um and so I think picking someone like Don Bluth, who comes from Disney, who has that background, but it's fascinating with him because he does have a lot of the kind of like a lot of the things that made Disney like their animation at least really like kind of cutting edge, I guess, for lack of a better word. But there's a lot of stuff that he does that Disney would just never do.
Yeah.
And like yeah,
It's
so
clear that he had like an artist schism, of like,
mhm.
Disney won't let me do this, so I'm going to do it all the time in my output.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, because we'll get into like the history of at least Bluth's tenure at Disney and what kind of like ultimately led to this movie coming about. But it is interesting because like Bluth is so crucial to the story of Disney as a brand as well,
Totally.
because of like when he left, which you talked about many times, and even on our Disney season we did a couple years ago, Brian, about like that point after Walt Disney died, where Ron Miller, who was his son-in-law, literally, ended up taking over the company at a certain point. And they were all just like, well, Walt would have probably done this, right? Like Aristocats, and then it keeps going on, and then they kind of run out, and they're like Black Cauldron. And in the middle of that, Bluth is involved and then separates off. And it's so fascinating to see his whole trajectory in his career. But I still remember when I was a kid, there was a weird blending of like Disney and Don Bluth to a certain degree. Like Anastasia's the most
Yeah.
famous one, or my sisters were like, she's a Disney princess. And I'd
Yeah.
be a dork
No.
for a while before that wasn't the case. I'd be like, actually, she's a Fox princess.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. There you
Yes,
go.
yes. Now that doesn't matter at all. She's a Disney princess. We're all Disney princesses in the
Oh,
ultimate
God.
scheme of
Yes.
things. And that's what we
Exactly.
become ultimately. We
One day
are
the air we
Half-Life.
breathe will be flavored like a Disney princess, and we'll all
Right.
be
Exactly.
the water we drink.
But I feel like even like an American Tail and some of these other ones kind of got grouped in with that because they had similar sensibilities to Disney, but there was definitely more of this like meaner streak. There was much more of this kind of like Don Bluth was kind of infamous for like making movies that would have like fucked up horrible moments,
And child endangerment.
or yeah, or right, or like scare you, or would make you really feel sad and contemplate death in certain degrees. And then it's like, but like everyone's happy at the end, right? So you're good. You're good. Get out of
Yeah.
here. It's
They
been an
made
hour.
it to
Get
the
out.
valley or whatever. Those little
Right.
dinosaurs won't be traumatized forever,
No.
just for a while.
Because I knew that Bluth left with the Fox and the Hound situation. I although I'm not a Disney historian by any means, I know about that whole situation. And I was trying to look up as I was watching a few of his other movies for this, like, oh,
Mhm.
which one did he work? Did he work on again? And the one he had additional directing credit on was The Rescuers, which I was like,
Yes.
of course, like
That
that would
movie
make so much sense.
rocks.
That movie is so fucked up in like so many ways, and it's so dark and like
Or even just some of the
like
character designs
yeah.
from like the 60s era, like a lot of the characters in
Yes.
Sword in the Stone look very much like Don Bluth characters. The dad from 101 Dalmatians is just, it's a Don Bluth character. The
Oh,
Yeah.
nose,
yeah.
everything is so there. Yeah,
the rabbits in Secret of NIMH, I was like, that is a poo rabbit. I don't
Right.
know
Yes.
if Bluth designed rabbit for
I-
that movie, but like the yellow, the pink nose, I was like, okay, somebody drew rabbit a bunch of times over at Disney and was like, yeah, just draw a rabbit, but smaller and, more to scale of this movie.
Right. Yeah, it's so interesting when you like consider that kind of like evolution. But like this was all like not really known to me as a child, obviously, and I watched a lot
Totally.
of these. I watched it was particularly An American Tail, Land Before Time, All Dogs Go to Heaven, and then Thumbelina was one that was in our house a lot, and we
Mm,
saw Anastasia theatrically.
right.
Thumbelina and Anastasia in particular because I have two younger sisters, and
Nice.
Anastasia
Same.
especially. I would just like I would wake up and I would hear like the fucking Once Upon a December song or whatever, like every morning, which made me resent that movie for a while. I think it's interesting going back to
Sure.
that movie for a lot of reasons. But yeah, I'm curious, Brian. You watched what was it? You watched American Tail, Land Before Time, Anastasia, and is that it?
That was it. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
because like I said, I had watched All Dogs to Heaven when I was like very very little, and I remember not a lot of it. And I was gonna rewatch it for this, but it's not on any streaming services, and I didn't feel like paying $4 for All Dogs Go to Heaven for a rental felt like a weird thing to do in my life. But yeah, and like I feel like I remember also seeing The Land Before Time as a kid, but in one of those like elementary school settings where the movie's just on, but like everyone's just napping or something or eating
Right.
snacks or whatever.
Of course, it could be
Um,
Land Before Time, or it could be one of. Do you all know
that's
how
what I
many
was
sequels
thinking.
there are?
14.
There are 14. Yes, 14.
Yes.
Crazy.
Land
Just
Before
like
Time. Especially when you watch that movie, and I rewatched that movie, and I mean, I think my biggest trouble with Land Before Time is like I think the first half of it is like a beautiful, immaculate masterpiece, and the rest of it's like a fine kids movie. But it's so weird watching that movie, and you're like, they made 13 other fucking movies about these goddamn characters.
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
insane.
The only one I remember is the one where they introduce the baby T-Rex Chomper and they like have
Yes,
to
I
get
remember
him
that one.
home. I remember that one being cute.
Yeah, I think that's the
Um,
second one. I've had like I think the first three or so on VHS.
yeah.
What trash. But like that's the weird thing is that Bluth has like as much as he's so tied into like Disney, there's also just a factor of like his movies kind of become so Disneyfied to the degree that also they have these direct-to-video sequels,
Yes.
including
Well,
this one.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is a beautiful segue. Were either of you that guy with the glasses fans when that was big before it became a kind of clusterfuck of internet drama?
Joey, what if I told you this came up last episode with our other guest Hyle Peralta?
Oh my god. Okay. Well, to me, I feel like I became culturally aware of Don Bluth when the Nostalgia Critics started reviewing his bad movies. And then I was
Mhm.
like, oh, I haven't seen any of these bad ones, but I've seen Secret of NIMH. I've seen Land Before Time. Like, I love The Rescuers. Like, oh, Don Bluth is like a master animator. And also, there's all these crappy direct-to-video sequels and a couple bad theatrical ones with his name stuck on them.
Yeah, so why don't we go ahead? We've been talking about Don Bluth. We've been talking about a lot of things here. But I want to get more a bit on Brian because I asked you about like your thoughts. Did you like
Sure.
the Don Bluth movies you actually watched, which I think is more crucial than this?
So when I watched The Land Before Time, my like initial thought was just like, what am I supposed to do with this? I have no real nostalgia for it or any sort of like attachment to it. I am a 26-year-old man watching The Land Before Time for basically the first time. Like I knew that it was like had a lot of like peril and that kind of like darkness that Don Bluth has in a lot of his movies. And this is kind of the problem I have with his other movies is this kind of like I really kind of like that darkness that that his movies have,
Mm-hmm.
and it's and again like as we'll talk about with Secret of NIMH, the vibes of all of his movies as well is
Immaculate
very
vibes.
incredible, but I struggle a lot with the writing, and I really struggled to put like to words what this is exactly, but this kind of like I don't want to call it juvenile necessarily, but kind of juvenile type of writing that Disney also does in a lot of their movies, and especially in like that kind of 60s, 70s, 80s period, which I also have a kind of fondness for the kind of Xerox style. Yeah, particularly like in 101 Dalmatians, which I believe is the first one to do that, and like
Yes.
I like that kind of like roughness almost that the Bluth movies have as well, but there is something about the contrast of these incredibly dark elements and the very jokey nature of a lot of this writing. Like the perfect example I think is something like Anastasia, which like half of this movie is I think kind of interesting. I don't like Dimitri. He's kind of a scrub. I don't like him at all. He's boring. But I really like this kind of like very like fairy tale set in like the real world and the kind of the journey of it all and this stuff.
The
And then
journey to the
everything
past, as we all
with,
remember. Yes, right. Yes.
of course, the journey to the
Right.
past.
Of course.
And then I just kind of loathed everything with Hank Azaria and with Rasputin because it
Christopher Lloyd is Rasputin, right? And he's got an army of
Yes.
cockroaches, and they sing a big song. That's
Right, and he's an undead zombie Rasputin who's been in like hell for so long.
Oh,
And,
cool.
like,
Wait,
What's
I don't remember
what-
this.
No, wait. Here's the thing. Right? You tell me on paper the villain of your movie is zombie Rasputin, voiced by Christopher Lloyd, and you're like he's alive
sign
and
me
like will
up.
fall apart. And right, that sounds great. But the problem with that movie, the biggest thing that like blew my mind watching it again for the first time since I was a small child, is how completely useless Rasputin is as
Yes,
a villain in that
I was-
movie. Because
yes.
he's like shows up initially where he's just like I will kill the Romanovs, and then he falls in water, in freezing water, and then he dies, and then he's in hell for like most of the movie. And just talking to fucking
Yes.
the bat Hank Azaria, just like, oh, I will get her. I'm gonna get her.
Okay.
Don't worry, I'm gonna get her. I'm gonna get her. And then he pops up like 5 minutes before the movie ends. Anastasia kicks his fucking ass immediately, and he's just gone.
Nice. All
It's
right.
so anticlimactic.
And Anastasia feels very, very much like a response to the Disney Renaissance. I don't think that's a new take, even though, again, I had just watched this movie for the first time.
Yeah.
And he feels the most like they're trying to do a Jafar, a Scar type villain. And yet there's also just these like weird slapstick elements to him and Hank Azaria. They're trying to do the what is the Gilbert Gottfried character in Aladdin again? I forget.
Iago.
Oh, Iago. Yeah.
Iago, right? Like they're trying to do that, but again, my tolerance for that kind of stuff is so low.
That late 90s era of like, oh, Disney's figured it out, and so Fox and Warner Brothers and
Yep.
like various other studios, like Quest for Camelot, Anastasia, The Swan Princess, like that chunk of we're trying our best, we're not quite there. It's such a kind of flawed, interesting period of animation history.
And it again, like it makes me kind of appreciate what Disney was able to do during the Renaissance, where like there's something about something like Anastasia that like does not work, and I was just trying to like figure out what it was that doesn't work here, but that really works in stuff like Hunchback of Notre Dame, which I really love, or
yeah.
Mulan, or like obviously Beauty and the Beast and Little Mermaid and stuff like that. And it's like I don't know, maybe you guys, because you are more experienced with Bluth, like can maybe put to words this, but like there's some kind of secret ingredient that's like missing from that. I just like I don't know.
Here's the big thing, Brian, that's really fascinating is like I can get it from the perspective of like someone coming to these movies for the first time, and even I don't have full nostalgia for like all these movies. I think they have significant problems, but at the same time, having the context of what Bluth does in like the early 90s, I think helps really great on a curve, quite frankly. Because Brian, you've not seen shit like Thumbelina or Rockadoodle or
Troll in Central Park.
no, even worse, The Pebble and the Penguin, which I finally that was the one I just never seen in full. I had seen I remember bits and pieces of it from my childhood and watching it. Brian, that movie is literally incomplete. There are so many moments where background characters stop moving. There's bits where people like change penguins change like facial color from scene to scene. The penguins have teeth. It's so distressing.
Penguins
They have
should not
fucking
have
teeth. The main character is voiced by Martin Short, and it is one of the few times they've ever found Martin Short completely unfunny. That takes a lot. That man is so funny even in the worst bullshit.
Yes. Though,
And-
Treasure Planet, though. I really don't like him in Treasure Planet.
At least he doesn't play like a weird incel penguin.
That's
which is
fair.
what he
That's
fucking
true.
is in The Pebble and the Penguin. Tim Curry also has a weird jock voice. He plays like a big like buff penguin who's supposed to have pecs, but it looks like he just has giant breasts.
Oh
They're
boy.
just it's like a weird cleavage he's got. It's so weird.
A thing in Bluth's movie, and this is all across animation, but like
Right.
when these movies become like weirdly horny, it's
Yes,
like such a
well,
weird and
we can talk about that.
interesting thing.
Well, yeah, especially Rockadoodle, which has hot like chickens and roosters. It's so weird. They have like
Yes.
that one stars an Elvis rooster, and then there's a lady like showgirl rooster, a chicken voiced by Ellen Green, from Little Shop of
Oh,
Horrors.
oh,
It's
cool. Okay.
it's fucking that movie's insane. That movie feels like a fever dream, which is like another thing with the Bluth movies is like after I think like Land Before Time, they start becoming a weird mix of like super sentimental and fucking unhinged. Like someone didn't like stop
Sure.
these people from doing this, and it's
And
so weird.
Right,
And then
well-
like especially with the Anastasia thing, Brian, like Thumbelina's so much worse because it's like Jodie Benson, voice of Ariel, is the main character, and
shit.
Gilbert Gottfried plays a side character who's basically like a villainous Iago.
Oh,
Wait, which one has
He
Jodie
wasn't even
Benson
going-
in it?
Thumbelina, she's the titular
Oh.
role.
I didn't know that. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Wild.
So they're going even more further for like the Renaissance with that.
Well, and like, I have to say though, like, An American Tale feels kind of like one of, other than the movie we're talking about today, like
Right.
the closest and the best kind of pairing of those two. Like, it is a movie about like immigration and the like possibly false notion of the American dream, and just all
Totally.
of these like very serious themes, and also like has just like a hot mice and has these kind of like very absurd, very goofy kind of elements to it. And yet I think it strikes some kind of balance that works a bit better than I think something like Anastasia does, which like really does just like feel like a Disney Renaissance ripoff. And like there's stuff I really like about that movie that I think is quite fun, but it just doesn't work. And I did not watch Titan AE, even though I did kind of want to, because
It's so your shit,
kinda
dude.
cool.
I
It's
still
so
don't
your
know what
shit.
that movie is about. It's a sci-fi movie, right? Is it like space stuff? What is happening?
Yeah,
in
it's
Titan
it basically like the opening of the movie is that Earth is destroyed by this alien race, and this boy is
Oh.
left orphaned. And it cuts to like a couple decades later, and now he's Matt
Okay.
Damon, and he's one of the few humans that's like around in space because Earth blew up. The human species is very finite, and they're trying to
Okay.
fight against these weird CG like monsters. And he ends up getting in touch with Bill Pullman, who's like a Han Solo, and his Chewbacca is sarcastic
Okay.
Nathan
So like
Lane.
Spaceballs? Like is he playing Lone Star but in a more
I
serious
mean, there's
movie?
no jamming of systems. There's no Michael Winslow. It's not quite. But it's interesting because that's basically like him after having like the Anastasia thing, where like so much of
Sure.
Don Bluth's career is going back and forth between I'm doing my own thing and I guess I gotta do what Disney does. That's like his back and forth constantly. And Tiny
Okay.
E was the last time it's like I get to do what I want to do and never get to do anything again.
Two more things I want to point out.
Sure.
One, I think going from something like the 80s run to Anastasia that is like so fascinating, and especially with this movie where you go like in this movie you're kind of like big star, quote unquote, I guess, is like Dom DeLuise, and then in Anastasia it is like Meg Ryan, John Cusack, Kelsey
Yeah.
Grammer, Christopher. Like it's
Well,
the thing that
this is an
happens.
independent feature made for $7 million, and Anastasia has the
true.
backing of 20th Century Fox. Like it's a
Yeah.
scale difference. The fact that this movie has incredible performances, in my opinion, from Elizabeth Hartman and John Carradine, is crazy. Like I mean, and Dom DeLuise is good. I'm not the biggest fan of Dom DeLuise in this movie, though he is funny. He's just not my favorite part of this movie.
You know,
but-
as a fat Italian, I'm very offended by this. I'm wearing
Listen,
my
as a
Pulperdome
not
hat.
thin Italian, I feel weird saying it.
Fair.
But like part of it is so important context. Now that we're starting to actually talk about Secret of NIMH, I feel like are we kind of
Yes.
transitioning into?
Well, you know, yeah.
focusing-
Let's go ahead and play the trailer now for Secret of NIMH.
let's do it.
Now, Don Bluth Productions creates a new world of animation. where fantastic creatures,
Why have you come?
great dangers, and great adventure await you. Look there. Discover The Secret of NIMH from the award-winning children's classic, rated G.
Starts Friday, Plymouth Century City, Hollywood, and selected theaters.
So yes, The Secret of NIMH, which came out on July 2nd, 1982, a big summer blockbuster of a movie, which is interesting. From, as we mentioned, director Don Bluth. And some of the writers involved include John Pomeroy, Gary Goldman, Will Finn, who would all be collaborators with Bluth. And they all had come from Disney, because on September 13th, 1979, Bluth, along with Goldman and Pomeroy and 8 others, left the feature animation department and formed Don Bluth Productions, basically out of Don Bluth's garage, where they had animated the short Banjo the Woodpile Cat, which I know, Joey, you watched recently.
I did. I watched it
Just
right
kind of prep
before
for
this recording because I had an hour to kill, basically.
Right. And it was a short pretty much produced entirely independently while they're working at Disney. And they brought it over to the animation department at Disney. We're like, hey, we've been doing this on the side. Do you like it? And Disney's like, oh, you're doing stuff off the side? What's up? Come on, we gotta work on Pete's Dragon or some shit. That's what really matters. Or Fox and the Hound, of course, which Bryan brought up. There's a lot more detail on this. I would really recommend in the Waking Sleeping Beauty documentary, which is on
so
Disney
good.
Plus currently. And that documentary is fascinating for really unraveling a lot of this in a lot more detail you'd expect from a thing that would be on Disney Plus because it wasn't produced by Disney. It's a great documentary. But yeah, basically Bluth leaves because he feels that the company's kind of run stagnant and he wants to really reignite animation in a new way, and sets up his own shop independently. Initially, like I said, in his garage, but then eventually they moved to a big facility in Studio City. And yeah, Don Bluth Productions has formed one of many production companies and animation studios Don Bluth will start and then horribly crash into the ground. He was infamous for doing this after a certain point. But Joey, what's your experience with The Secret of NIMH in general? And then what about your recent research? Because I know you went hardcore for prep.
I went lightly hardcore, which is
which is better than either of us do. So please,
sure. So the Secret of NIMH is based on a 1971 novel called Mrs. Frisbee and the Rats of NIMH. But this is one of my dad's favorite books. And considering Father's Day was coming up and this podcast was coming up, I was like, what a perfect opportunity to reread this book that I haven't read since I was like an early teenager, and then watch the movie immediately after. And I was quite frankly delighted that 80% of it is a extremely faithful adaptation. And then the biggest change is that, to put it in D&D terms, the rats are artificers in the book and they're wizards in the movie. The book is a lot more rooted in this light sci-fi, realistic fantasy idea of, if NIMH, the National Institute of Mental Health, experimented on rats and mice, which is apparently something that really happened in the 40s. This is loosely based on a real scientific study that the author was inspired by. What would happen if that experiment was really successful and rats learned the joy of reading and developed a personal philosophy and a society, and there was interfighting between rats that felt differently about things? The book has a completely different third act where, if you recall in the movie, Mrs. Brisby overhears that NIMH is coming. And in the book, the stone is moved safely rather quickly by the rats. And then the danger of the third act is, okay, now NIMH has shown up with cyanide and rat traps. And how are the rats going to safely escape to Thorn Valley before, this man-motivated disaster befalls them? And Jenner is referenced in the book, but Bluth, in the adaptation was basically we need a rat-level threat for our third act. We need a more palpable, understandable rat and mouse scale villain. And sort of elevated Jenner from, who's basically a footnote in the book, who dies off screen, trying to steal a motor from a neighboring town with like 6 other rats that abandoned the rosebush colony.
Mm-hmm.
And instead made Jenner this, scenery chewing, megalomaniacal, power hungry sword fighter guy. Which, for an early 80s kids movie, yeah, that's exactly the kind of villain you want to like have a big sword fight in the third act. Like, I totally get why the changes happen.
That is interesting, because like especially for me, I'll say this is not the first time I've seen this movie, but I didn't watch this one in childhood.
Mhm.
This is definitely one that I discovered later when I was kind of becoming more aware of like Bluth and who he was. And it's so interesting going back and seeing like this particular like what you're talking about, that kind of more fantastical edge, which is what the movie does up front. Like
Yes, no,
Bryan,
from beat
Yeah.
beat 1, Nicodemus, wizard, magical amulet.
yes,
It's
and,
there.
and it's not until like about I don't know almost halfway through the movie that we get like the Great Owl bit and we find out more about like, oh, they were experimented on and this is
Yeah.
like this thing, and which is so fascinating to me and kind of reminds me of I think a creator who was inspired by this Pendleton Ward, creator of
Oh,
Adventure
sure.
Time. I see a
Totally.
lot of like with Adventure
yeah.
Time. What works about that show so much is that like they imply that like there was a horrible scientific man-made like disaster that happened and like because of it, it
Yeah.
unleashed whatever fantastical goo was
They imply
inside.
it in season 1, and then it's basically the plot of seasons 4 through 10. Like, they get
Exactly.
into it eventually.
Yes.
It's awesome.
Right. Right. That's what's so fascinating about that show. And I feel like that's very much what works about NIMH, but they don't really over explain that, which I think is genius, where it's like, oh, science has gone this far that like now rats have like weird, fantastical cosmic powers. I
Yeah.
just think that's so fucking rad.
So, Tommy, a whole third of the book is Nicodemus telling like an extremely detailed account to Mrs. Frisbee of how the rats like changed from normal rats to intelligent rats and how they escaped from NIMH. As soon as I started reading that section of the book, I was like, this is a montage in the movie. It's going to be a really good montage, but it's going to be like 3 minutes, and it absolutely is in the end of the second act.
It's really interesting going into this, which I was like, this was the last kind of Bluth movie I watched, and the minute that it starts with this kind of like very fantastical, and like obviously the poster, which is like
The sickest poster of all
very
time.
sick
It's so
poster.
dope.
It's an
Sick poster,
incredible
yes.
poster, but just it starts with that kind of like fantasy like aesthetic, and I am such an easy mark for that kind of stuff. I like it's a thing about like this movie kind of reminded me of is something like The Black Cauldron, which
I wonder
This-
if Cauldron was a response to this from Disney. Because it's 3 years later.
yeah, and like
Mhm.
this movie is much better than The Black Cauldron,
Oh,
which
certainly.
like that movie, The Black Cauldron has like some of the sickest art design and just like visuals in any animated movie, but there's also most of it is like boring and very very not good.
Or that
And,
weird
like,
little dog guy kind of being
Yes,
annoying.
Maybe the worst Disney sidekick in history, Gurgi.
Yeah. Listen,
Yeah.
I am on record. I love little guys. Give me a little guy in your movie. Give me a Babu Frick. Give me like a little weirdo causing problems. Totally about it. But I did not like Gurgi, and I think that is a real sign of how the Black Cauldron's failure is. If I did not
Yeah.
enjoy the film's little guy.
And this movie, that movie is more like dark gothic. This one kind of dark fantasy, but not fully going into like another like 80s kind of dark movie, like something like The Dark Crystal, which I really love as well. But
hell
like
yeah, great movie.
they have this kind of
Mhm.
like, and again, I often will say like on this show, just like the vibes are great, but like it is this kind of like atmosphere and this kind of like tone that even if you're not sure what's going on, if it's so unfamiliar, unknown, if like something like the Dark Crystal, which is just like a completely different world,
Right.
and yet there's something kind of really engrossing about it and really kind of intriguing. Like it kind of like begs you to want to just not even know more, but just kind of like live in this world. And as skeptical as I kind of was going into this a little bit, that kind of part of the movie like was just instantly like the minute they cut to that like portal thing that Nicodemus? Is that his name?
Nicodemus, yeah, like the crystal ball kind of thing that he's looking
Yeah,
for,
I'm like,
right?
that is just like, come on. Like, I can't, I can't deny that.
To put on my like media studies hat for a second, I feel like a lot of that wonder comes from how great they pull off the scale of this movie. Of like,
Yes.
you are in the weeds and the muck and the dirt with these small creatures that so much can hurt and destroy them. And also the fact that Mrs. Brisby is like a perfect example of someone who is afraid and again chooses courage. Like, chooses to go down the dark hole, chooses to not leave her son behind, chooses to volunteer for the suicide mission with Dragon the cat that killed her husband, that she just learned, like, you know, was what befell her love. And you are sitting in that fear and in that bravery with her the whole time, and it's completely captivating. It's fantastic.
I think what really works about this movie, I think the big thing that separates it from the other Bluth movies, that makes it, I think, stand easily above as his best, is the fact that, like, because this is an independent movie, and they really want to separate themselves off from Disney, who at this time is doing stuff like Rescuers. It's much more like oscillating between extremely loud and abrasive and kind of dull. And Bluth finds this beautiful middle ground, particularly in this movie, of like an intimacy, which I think speaks to the scale thing you're talking about, Joey, but also with like Miss Brisby herself. She has such a clear, like, maternal, loving interactions with her kids, but they're not like as overt and I think as unsubtle as they would be in like a kids movie that's talking down to kids. This is definitely like an example of a kids movie where it knows how kids act, like the various different children of Miss Brisby, which include, by the way, Will Wheaton's one of the kids, and Shannon Doherty, right, is the older sister. Is so interesting to like watch those kids feel like so realistic and grounded as kids, which all honestly helps the moment Brisby comes back in. It's just like, oh, you guys for like messing with the babysitter. She means well.
Yeah.
It's just I have so much on my plate. Okay. Like, she wants, like, you can tell she wants to say that, but she's so like protective of these children and really doesn't want them to experience any more pain than they have. That like it's so immediately invests you in like, this fucking single mice mom needs to keep it together.
Who, I mean, if we're giving out awards, let's give Mrs. Brisby Mother of the Year over here.
The world's greatest mom mug and her kids can hang out in, I guess, because they're that small.
Yes, exactly. Give her a world's greatest mom trophy that they can make into a new wing of their house. Exactly.
That is the part of the movie, though, that feels not necessarily darker, but like more ground, like an American Tale, having these kind of like very kind of earnest for their time and for animation, like portrayals of what like immigration is actually like, to sort of like leave your country and go to another country that you don't know, except that you know that there's no cats in America, obviously, but
right, as we all know.
Exactly.
And the streets are paved with cheese.
Yes,
we've all experienced it.
Bluth, a very anti-cat filmmaker,
in general,
animator, which, as someone who loves cats, I find a little bit offensive, but it's okay.
If you check out Banjo the Woodpile Cat, the cats there are pretty friendly, though.
That's true. It stars mainly cats.
Oh, that's true.
Tommy, I don't know if you felt this way. A couple of the shots of those kittens in that movie, in the early part, I was like, why are these kittens being drawn like mice? Like, maybe that was just me, but the way they were moving, I was like, maybe my brain is Aristocats pilled, and I'm like, if a cat is not moving like Aristocats in 2D animation, something is off.
Right.
I mean, that's true.
Because everyone wants to be a cat, as we all know. As well.
Yes.
I mean, animation in general has been very anti-cat, but yeah, like the Mrs. Brisby as a character, like, does feel like a more sort of quote unquote realistic and like depiction of like these themes in Bluth's movies are not generally the kind of, I mean, like the Disneyified, like there's a reason that term has kind of become a thing, like version of adult themes, right? Like this movie does kind of is about like a single mother who is just like struggling to get by, and like it treats it very earnestly. And it's unfortunately sometimes in Bluth's other movies, I do feel that kind of like condescending tone a little bit. In this, it's not as apparent at all, really. And I think it's a very earnest movie in the way that it's, again, tackling a lot of these themes, and in the way that it's kind of depicting this world, which I think is like, I agree, like, is very, very cool as well. Like, you almost don't really know what the scale of the movie is at first when you meet, like,
Yeah.
Mrs. Brisby and like the crow. Like, it doesn't feel like this takes place in the quote unquote real world. It feels like it takes place in like a kind of Dark Crystal-esque like fantasy universe, and like it takes a while to sort of unfurl, which I think is like it's part of what I was talking about, which is like it's just so, it's very enticing, it's very interesting to sort of like get engrossed in all of it.
Yeah, I think it's a real testament, especially not like a big thing that I love about Don Bluth movies that I didn't really respect until I rewatched them this time. His backgrounds are like
Oh,
immaculate. It's
so
up there with like
gorgeous.
matte paintings that were around this era.
Yeah.
Can
In
we
terms of
talk
just
about
how
the
like lush
the
and gorgeous they were.
backlighting thing? Did you come across
Yes.
this in your research, Tommy? This is amazing.
Sure, go ahead. I know it, but why don't you tell the people out there?
So, and correct me if I get the details of this wrong, but my
Sure.
understanding is that because this is a traditionally animated movie on animation cells using a, two-plane, like a multi-plane camera, which was the style at the time, some of the light in this movie, like the glowing eyes of Nicodemus and the Great Owl, the Christmas lights in the Rats of Nim hideout, that is real light being shown through the cell from below that then is captured by the camera. So it's not just color and the light of, the film, like, the projector running the film. Like that is light that was included as a artistic tool in a way that, you don't see all the time in traditionally 2D animated movies. It's stunning. I think it makes such a cool impression on the viewer.
There's a lot of incredible effects animation in this movie, like sort of the lightning stuff that happens near the end with like
So
the
sick.
jewel and everything. It's
And
yeah, it's
fire.
really yes,
And
incredible.
the water. There's so much good water
Yeah.
in this movie. All the hard stuff.
Yeah, all the stuff that like animators are infamous about. That it shows that like Bluth is trying to like show off all these skills, but I like that it still is once again on a story that still feels like it has a lot going on with like the Rat Society and building up what NIMH is, and even like the character stuff they're really investing in. So that when we have like these elaborate sequences, they still kind of mean something. Like a big thing is like
Totally.
we were mentioning the Crow, the Don Bluth, the Don DeLuise
Jeremy.
Crow early. Yes, Jeremy, which I have a fondness for Dom DeLuise. I love him in the Mel Brooks movies and stuff like that. Always like kind of fun to see him pop up. But the man was one of many examples, like very talented comedians who just cashed in on like, I'm gonna do the voice of your fat fucking side character in this
Totally.
movie. I'm gonna make so much money doing this throughout the 80s and 90s. And bless him, because I think like the thing is though, that archetype became so tired, but it's interesting going back to it here, where it feels a bit more fresh, and it feels like even with his comedic bit, it feels actually like from more of a character as opposed to the Dom DeLuise persona.
Totally. He brings a ton of personality to this role, which in the book is like a 1-year-old crow who is very sweet and who Mrs. Frisbee rescues, and then he's like, I owe you one. Like, I'm going to help you. Like, that seems to be the right thing to do. And Dom DeLuise basically, like, combining that attitude with his comedic persona and this sort of fun, like, I'm ready to be a family man, and I'm kind of learning from Mrs. Brisby along the way as I work my way to true love, That's fun. It feels like this is way before celebrity stunt casting in animated movies,
Mhm.
I feel like. And so to have a character that so like is breathed life into by someone's comedic persona feels like sort of it's not trailblazing. I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, but it feels ahead of its time.
What's so fascinating about Don Bluth's entire story is how tragically it's so built into like, oh, hey, you left Disney and you showed up Disney, and then Disney just copied you and ended up making better movies than you ever could, and then you're out of
They
there.
had more money and more time, and
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Meanwhile, you're bankrupting studios left and right.
in
Yeah,
Ireland,
like the Jeremy does feel very Disney though in a lot of ways, like just kind of having the comedic side character, like that is such a Disney like trope. and especially of
Totally.
the Renaissance. You're right. Like it's again like it is this weird cycle where yeah, he does this, they copy him, and then he tries to copy it again with Anastasia, and it doesn't work, and like
And then he tries to do something different and it fails completely. That's the
sure,
one time
yeah,
it did
yeah,
work
yeah.
for him, unfortunately, Brian.
But like it's also not, and this is the thing the problem I kind of have with Bluth's other movies is that like this comic relief character is not as annoying as the other
Right.
ones. You know, like even the fucking kid in American Tail, who's kind of like the um like wisecrack, like New Yorker kind of like
Oh, the New Yorker at the
yeah,
like
you
proto
know, but this
Rizzo
guy-
over there.
hey, Philly. It's there's kind of a almost a simplicity to like this just being like yeah, he's kind of the comic relief character, he's a bit of Dom DeLuise, but he's not as annoying as those other ones, and like again my tolerance for that kind of
Totally.
thing is just like so low, but it kind of does work here a little bit, and having him in the like these kind of smaller bursts where he like oh he shows up when she is trying to get into the rat's home or whatever the kingdom and
I
stuff like
do
that.
love.
Just,
I love his line delivery of "I'm in disguise."
Yes.
It's so good.
I love what was it when he's like when Brisby asks her like, hey, can you go over and like take care of my kids? Like, oh, you know what? I'm great with kids. I love playing with kids. It's like so
Yes.
great, and girls love guys who are good with kids, right? So I'm totally gonna go over there and help you out. It feels like he's kind of improvising it in a fun way, like what he was prone to do around this
Yeah.
time.
It's so effective, I think, that Mrs. Brisby literally kicks him out of the movie for 20 minutes when things are getting real.
yes, yeah.
She's just like, hey, we need a bunch of string. Why don't you go get it? And he's like, great, I'm on it. And then he misses the third act danger set piece completely and just comes in for the happy ending.
Right, which is very strong. It also helps that the big thing with the other Bluth movies, I feel like after this point, he's like, oh, how about we double the comedy characters every movie?
Yes.
To the degree that, like, in Rockadoodle,
Yes.
there's like 17 comedic reliefs. It's like, this isn't relief anymore. This is a fucking nightmare.
It's a flockadoodle, a comedic relief.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, there's some other people in here that we should mention. Like, I love any of these like sort of fantasy movies where like you interact with various different characters along the way. I'm like a big sucker for like Wizard of Oz and shit like that. And this movie has
Yeah.
great like weird side characters. Like I love Mr.
Yes.
Ages was by
Love
Arthur Mallet.
Mr. Ages. He's way
Yes.
more cantankerous in the movie than he is in the book, and it rules. It's
Yeah.
like were you thinking of Gopher from Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, kind of with Mr. Ages? He's like a
Right.
I got some Gopher energy from him a little.
I mean,
bit.
I'd say it's very Rabbit. I think in a way that like
Yeah.
reminds me of sort of like
That
the Bluth
too.
animation you're talking about. Like when he's like going around, just like no, don't touch anything. I was like, no,
Yeah, oh,
what
that's
was wrong
very
with him
true.
again? It's like, oh, he has a fever. And did you put him in a blanket? Like when he goes down that checklist, it's like let me make
Yes.
sure she did everything right. And it's like, okay, yeah, I
Ah,
guess
yeah.
he can't be moved. But
Yeah.
moving day's coming. I told you what I said. Take this and give to your kid. I just love that he's very like curt about even
Yes.
helping this woman at all.
Have we praised Elizabeth Hartman enough yet? This is her last performance, and it's incredible.
Yeah, Elizabeth Hartman had a very tragic sort of backstory and personal life after this point. But yeah, I think it's an incredible performance. I think it's especially
Incredible performance.
that warmth we're talking about. I think so much of it radiates off of her, but also a lot of that cleverness. Like I love the way that she plays dumb with Jeremy, which we didn't talk about. Where it's
Yes.
like when he's
Yes,
about to,
it's
oh, like go
really
off and
good.
take care of my kids. She's like, oh, but who? I can't take care of the kids. Somebody has to. It's like, wait, why don't you do it?
It's that perfect energy of when a mom has figured out how to reverse psychology her children and
Yes.
realizes she can
Yeah.
apply it to an adult because he's childlike. You know?
Yeah. I don't know if it like fully fits into like the hero's journey type of thing, but like very much a like person who has to go on this adventure and find the courage within themselves or whatever.
Mhm.
And I feel like a lot of times you can have that it can feel like that character is like almost wanting not to be in the movie at times, where it's like, no, I don't want to go on this adventure. Like it's like the Luke Skywalker thing, but just like extended much more. And there's a genuine sense of her kind of like fear and trepidation about this, especially when she's like about to go drug the cat food.
Yeah.
It's a really kind of good sense of showing someone who is courageous and is brave, but still has that kind of fear. And,
Yes.
like it just has a really good balance of that, which I think, especially in animation, like a lot of these movies don't do. They feel very condescending. They feel very like unbalanced in the way that they're handling it. And there is a genuine like, it's weird to say humanity because they're mice, but like you get a sense of her personality, I guess, much more.
There's an incredible beat where the idea has been introduced that a mouse needs to drug the food. In the book, she kind of volunteers right away, and I loved in the movie that she doesn't volunteer. She's about to leave. You see her in the animation like take a beat, and then she turns around and says, I volunteer. Like, I'll do it. And it's a beautiful, like, she refuses the call for like 2 seconds and then is like, no, the right thing to do is to do this for my son. And it floored me. I loved it. Amazing moment.
Another great moment like that, and especially that danger Brian was talking about earlier, is the tractor scene where her and Auntie Shrew try and like dismantle the tractor and like cut the fuel line. And there's just a shot after the tractor stopped where Brisby's like hanging on to like the axle, I think, and it's just like shivering, like she's in a almost like catatonic state for a second before she can get up. It's those kind of things that make her feel once again like very authentic. And also, I think it's one of the better examples of like the Don Bluth chaos, which I think takes over his movies after a certain point. Where that scene is so like breakneck and crazy.
Yeah.
And it's like they're fucking scattering all around the fucking parts of this tractor, and it feels like they're truly like scurrying and scratching stuff. There's a texture that I don't think you get from a lot of the Disney movies around this time, like A Fox and the Hound, some of the other ones that made Don Bluth leave. There's a lack of that texture as well.
Well,
which I think,
that tractor looks crazy. Like, I joked about this at the beginning, but like that is clearly like a rotoscoped tractor. Like they probably filmed a tractor and then drew over it. And it looks insane. Like that would be CG in a movie 10 years later. And it's clear that it's hand-drawn. It's just hand-drawn totally different than anything else in the movie. It's awesome.
Well, to be fair, a lot of the 3D objects are animated like that. Like the bird cage she gets stuck in at a certain point has a similar vibe. The cinder block even as well. Like for those, I think that it's just this weird, interesting proto, like what Bluth would later become a part of. And I think Disney even tried during the last bits of hand-drawn, like that CG/2D combination thing.
I really love that stuff when it is getting into like, for example, like when it is becoming a hybrid, like in like Treasure Planet. I think it's like it's that perfect balance where Anastasia kind of has this, where it will have a lot of like 2D animation, but then it has a very liberal use of CG elements that I find kind of distracting at times. Like there's parts I really like the little like jewelry box thing, that little like the figurine being CG is kind of nice, but then there's just other elements that just feel very incongruous with the 2D animation. But in this, there's that very, very early kind of like merging of the two, and like,
well, there's no computer graphics happening there.
No, there's no computer.
It is with Xerox technology and pencils and paper. Like that is all.
That's not 100% dissimilar though to like in later Disney movies of this decade, you start getting CG that looks like that. Like I think in Great Mouse Detective,
it's an apt comparison for sure.
Yes.
The clockwork stuff in Mouse Detective, right? Isn't that the early CG in that movie?
Yeah.
I guess we're seeing a kind of weird version of that in like the sort of post Spider-Verse era, where we have like CG elements, hand-drawn animated stuff, and then like again whatever Spider-Verse is doing, like this
like
blending of
on
styles
the twos so that it looks very different.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. And like I like that kind of element. Like if we're not gonna do fully 2D animated movies again, like fully sort of hand-drawn stuff, I like that kind of like melding of like, let's just combine some of this stuff, because then we've talked about like the sort of, as impressive as the technology is behind a lot of the animation that Disney's able to do, where it's like, oh my god, the snow in Frozen 2 looks like real, and the hair physics and all this stuff, like it robs it a little bit of that kind of texture that like something like this has, which it has like kind of like, I don't want to call it ugliness, but I mean ugliness in like a good way. Like there's kind of a roughness to it.
I say with a lot of affection that Don Bluth movies of this particular era look a lot like they were animated on paper that had like coffee stains and cigarette ash on it.
Sure.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think particularly
That's
like
what's up.
All Dogs Go to Heaven is just that. I think it is 90%
I
like
should
cigarette
rewatch
ash
that movie.
all over that
Yeah.
movie. There's this feeling of like we're mentioning that tactility, especially like this one kind of having like that scrounging around like the dirt element of it. It really accentuates a lot of this, especially when you have like Brisby going through those catacombs. Great example of that. When she meets my favorite character, the Great Owl. I think one of the great
Yeah.
Not
characters in
before she
animation
meets a
history.
spider.
Great
which,
show.
Well, that's right. Which makes the Great Owl your favorite possible character because he destroys that spider, Brian, with your severe arachnophobia.
well, I didn't see that scene. It's like
Right.
many a great spider scenes where I just can't watch the movie. It's like the
Aw.
Shelob scene from Lord of the Rings,
Sure.
where I just like cannot watch it.
So like Spider-Verse, are you closing your eyes for like 90% of the movie?
Well, there's the part where the spider like bites him like that
Yeah.
in the subway. I can't watch that.
I
Even
got
it's
you.
like it's bad. But like that meant it like comes down to like it's very eerie. And again,
Yes.
like I feel like this is definitely the kind of the thing I've heard from a lot of these Don Bluth movies from other people of like I watched that when I was a kid and it scarred me for life or something like that.
Yeah.
And like
Right.
again, I'm watching this as I'm 26 years old, but like I get that sort of eerie feeling that these have.
Do y'all use the terminology? I don't know if this is something I made up or if this is something I stole from the internet, but the idea of a hard PG or a hard G.
I get what you're talking about.
Yeah,
It's
like
Sure,
like
yeah.
in a PG movie where like, you know, like you see Puss in Boots: The Last Wish and you're like, "Oh wow, that sword drew blood." Like this is a hard PG. Or like in this movie where there's scary things and the sword fights, they do draw blood, but like this
There's
movie's
blood,
rated
yeah.
G.
Yeah.
You know? I think it's important to scare kids a little bit. Like, I love when that
agree,
happens
yes.
in media for young people. Like, kids want to be challenged. Kids want to be scared. It's really important to their development to, like, face challenges in their art. You know?
I mean, I'll say this much: like something like Land Before Time with like the death of Littlefoot's mother, I think taught me more about death than like Bambi ever did. Because in Bambi, they like really cut away from it. They like
Yeah.
immediately after like she gets shot, as opposed to like you see Littlefoot basically grieve his mother over the course of like the next 5 minutes of that movie, and it's
Yeah.
so I think it's one of the better depictions of death in a children's film. And I think like this movie has so many like moments like that I think just really just sort of emphasizing like the dangerous elements like we're talking about, like the Great Owl. The Great Owl is such a cool, mystic, like otherworldly character, but I love the fact that he's so kind of like ambivalent until like everyone is so ambivalent until they find out about like her connection to her husband. Which I think is interesting how like every single one of these characters doubts her, but it only has like the one sliver like, well, you're Jonathan's wife, you know, I owe him one, especially when like a big giant owl is telling you this and covered in cobwebs and all this other shit.
I really like the through line of, like, Jonathan Brisby was the man. And, like, his wife is a extraordinary mouse. And everyone comes to understand through the lens of Jonathan Brisby was the man that his wife is a dynamite lady who is just as impressive, but on like a different. She's had less experience being impressive, I would say.
Right.
Yeah, on the Great Owl scene, which like once we get past the spider and I can actually watch the movie again,
Yeah.
it is exactly like the kind of like dark, fantastical kind of vibe that I love. Like I mentioned, Lord of the Rings. I just that kind of style is so it's so cool. I think, and having these talking animals be kind of within this like there's an ecosystem to this movie in this kind of on this farm basically, and I really kind of love the way that it depicts that but doesn't really go into like specifics about a lot. Like there is the Great Owl and he's like wise, but there's kind of a menace to him. He's not like an oracle necessarily. He is an oracle in a way, but there's something kind of scary about him, and there's something kind of menacing about him, and or like as you said, like ambivalence to Miss Brisby, and I don't know, like there is something really. I'm gonna make a video game comparison here, because a lot of what this reminded me of is a game that I played a few years ago called Ori and the Blind Forest.
Oh yeah.
Which has this kind of like the creatures in it are not like mice and stuff, like they are more like fantastical creatures, but it has this kind of, there's no dialogue in the game, and it has a very otherworldly feeling, and a very like, there is kind of a great owl character kind of in this like giant bird that is constantly like following you. And again, it's all through the kind of like visuals of it, and same with this kind of sequence, which is just like so cool and mysterious. And I don't know, I just, yeah, I really like that kind of tone that you can like, obviously he does speak, voiced by John Carradine, but it's one of these movies that, and I said this towards Black Cauldron in a bad way, but I'm saying it towards this in a good way, where like you could just kind of have it on in the background, like sound off, and it would still just be this like amazing like mood setting almost. You could just have it on, like, and this sequence is such a great example of that, of just like, oh, it's so like it's so my type of shit, I think.
It's also really interesting when you consider like that video game comparison that like also around the same time Bluth is starting to like help revolutionize video games with Dragon
Oh
Slayer,
yeah,
which is which I think those video games, like I watched some playthroughs of those recently because they were before my time, but I was interested like watching, especially the second one is deranged. Like there's a whole Alice in Wonderland level, and especially with the gameplay of those where it's like you go left, right, up, or down. Like when you have Don Bluth going like, you know, a bit unhinged with the first one, and by the second one, like there's a whole sequence where you're chasing after Beethoven's cat as he's playing his Sixth Symphony, and his
what
fucking piano is bursting into the air into space.
What?
That happens.
Does the second one have time travel?
Yes, and you go into Alice in Wonderland earlier, and then you're time traveling into Beethoven's
I gotta check that out.
Back to NIMH, I think what's you mentioning that kind of the peril that's really inherent here, Brian, that kind of video gamey way. I do love how this does feel like a true quest movie, where it's like you have to like find these certain people, get these certain objects, all this other stuff, but it doesn't feel too like task focused at the same time.
Yeah, there is this kind of like epic scale in a way. And it is a quest movie. I love a quest movie, obviously like Star Wars, but like I love like Jason and the Argonauts or something like that. Like
yeah.
I love that kind of stuff. But there's a simplicity to it, which I think is like, I can't quite put my finger on it entirely, but like, again, like it is a quest movie and she has to go on this adventure, and yet it's all, again, relatively speaking, on this one patch of land. And it's mainly about her trying to like get home to her kids and like save her kids and just be with her sick child and take care of him. Like it's there are obviously there are like bigger, wider implications, but the story here is relatively simple and minimal, which I think is like really important to films like this, which have a grander scale, is to have a sense of like, you know, that can be often kind of mistaken for like broad writing, but I think in here it really works how kind of simple her goal is initially, I guess.
And a big help to that kind of like that scale and that grandness is something we haven't shamefully mentioned yet, but Jerry Goldsmith's motherfucking score for this movie.
Such a good score.
Great. It's like, it's lush, it's beautiful, it's intimate, it has all these factors, but it's like, it just fits so wonderfully. And how many fucking like kids movies in the wake of Don Bluth, and even some of the later Bluth movies, have like the cacophonous score that like is abrasive and is just trying to play like the comedy of any scene, versus this is like, it's all just very seriously treated. Like any of this, like this little mouse is scurrying up this, this like floor area where there's a giant cat. This is the most terrifying moment you could ever experience.
Yeah.
And Goldsmith's score really emphasizes on that.
And that Paul Williams lullaby is nice. It's not his best song written for film, but it's nice. That's a nice lullaby.
But I also think this might be the earliest example to me, because I don't know if Disney did this before, but the weird like adult contemporary cover of a song from the movie that like a lot of the Bluth movies had this afterward, like Somewhere Out There,
Sure.
or the Diana Ross song for fucking Land Before Time, and then Disney rips that off and gets like Celine Dion and shit to do Beauty and the Beast.
Well, here it literally is like Paul Williams wrote the song, and the version over the credits is him performing it. So that's I feel like that's slightly different than like the part of your world but slowed down.
There is an earlier version of the song, I think the lullaby kind of version that plays as well.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Joey, I'm curious, like, especially as like a big animation person, considering where Disney was at this time, what do you think really separated this out from the pack?
Part of it is that atmosphere that we keep talking about of like combining these old school and new school traditional animation techniques makes this movie look and feel like nothing else. Like let's double check real quick. What is the Disney movie that was released closest to this?
Oh,
I
I
think
have
it's
it.
a Fox and the Hound because that's like 81, 82.
Fox and the Hound, yeah. So like, I think part of also what you're talking about is like, we all know like Disney in the '80s is struggling, but they don't make that many movies. Like to run through it very very quickly, Fox and the Hound is 1981, Black Cauldron is 85, Great Mouse Detective 86,
Yeah.
Oliver and Company 88, and then Little Mermaid 89. Like, and then if you count 1990, that's The Rescuers Down Under, of course. But like, they didn't make that many
Animated movies take a long freaking time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when Bluth left with 9 animators, I'm sure that really slowed down their pipeline for the 80s. And Tim Burton left at Fox and the Hound. Freaking John Lasseter, I think, left during Fox and the Hound. Like, a lot of eventual animation luminaries ditched Disney mid-production of Fox and the Hound.
And when you watch that movie, it is so clearly trying to go for a more adult theme, and that it's about like prejudice and like these two different like animals trying to like reconcile that, and it fumbles that so.
I
brutally.
struggled with Fox and the Hound as a kid.
Yeah.
I think part of it was just the second half made me too sad. Like that first half is all fun and games, and then it's like, and now I hate you and you're my brother. Like it's heartbreaking.
Also doesn't help that the weird casting in that movie of like it's Mickey Rooney's the fox and then Kurt Russell is the dog. Like fucking 50-year-old Mickey Rooney and then like 20s like Snake Plissken era fucking Kurt
That's
Russell.
true. I forgot about that.
It's such a weird disparate thing that I think those voices don't feel like they're from the same time zone or anything.
Yeah.
It's so fucking weird. But yeah, I think that movie just really like you can see how that degrading ship like really contrasts with this movie, right?
Yeah. But to like I think return to the other like half of my point that I kind of got lost in.
Yes.
This third act, this like child endangerment, high fantasy danger third act, I think is pretty stunning. Of like the wet and the muck and the rain and the blood and the fear and the fantasy. Like that's nothing like what Disney was doing in the previous decade. Like Robin Hood's got sword fights, but that's a pretty squeaky clean movie compared to Secret of NIMH.
Right, and even like the way that we see stuff like when Nicodemus dies, which we haven't talked like we've talked around Nicodemus, but Nicodemus is such a cool fucking design.
Cool
and
guy.
like Derek
Great
Jacobi's
fucked up
voice.
hands.
Yes. and his opening of the movie I think is really crucial to it, which is like the writing down the stuff on parchment with the ink and then like golden glows and everything like that.
If your movie starts with a guy going like, and once upon a time, like I'm kind of in, like just that like that kind of like voice and that kind of.
In times long past, there was a hero, and now you get to see the tale. Like, oh yeah, let's go. Tell me, old man, let's go.
Right, but when he ends up getting crushed and we just see like his arm like lopped over, that also feels much more like upsetting in a way that like, and even like Fox and the Hound, like by contrast, does that whole like real chicken out bit where like the old dog ends up seemingly dying by like falling off the train tracks, and then later on it's just like, oh, I'm all right, and that I believe was like the big breaking point for Bluth, if I'm right.
Oh,
like
interesting.
if Waking Sleeping Beauty might prove me wrong, but I remember that being a crucial bit of like a battle that he was like upset he couldn't like really maintain. And I think the way this movie treats death is so like sudden and brutal, like with the Jenner character. Right, it's Jenner's the one that like
Jenner's the bad guy. Yeah,
yes.
he's the megalomaniacal asshole who's
right
pulling the strings.
Right, his whole like thing, which also feels like I think a much more grounded than a lot of the other like Disney villains around this time, because he's basically like an evil congressman for like NIMH, which I think rules as like a villain archetype.
He's got a really core philosophy, which is in the book too, of like he thinks the rats should just keep stealing because the stuff they steal is awesome. And the other rats are like, but if we're always stealing, then are we really existing as our own society? We're just a parasite on human society. Why do we want to do that forever?
Right, he has much more traditional conservative values as a rat.
Exactly.
And
uh,
his his death is like not brutal necessarily, but is like kind of violent. And even his like turn when he's like when it was Miss Brisby is like comes back and is like, no, we need to move because Nim is coming and they're gonna like destroy the rose bush.
Mm-hmm.
He whips out that sword immediately and is just like gonna
he's ready to
slice
go.
her down. It's you know, like I think part of like what separates I think the stuff that Bluth is doing around this point from like even Disney going into the Renaissance, like a lot of those Renaissance movies are not nearly as dark as this. Like they go for a much more bombastic, grand quality to them. Like, you know, there's stuff in there that is like kind of messed up, but you know, and obviously like people will point to like Mufasa's death in The Lion King or something like that.
Sure.
But like you I think like you were saying, Joey, like the mud and the like just the ugliness of it. It's like really like in the mud, in the dirt, and like again, like Lion King still has a very like sweeping, beautiful quality to it.
The color palette of this movie is not bright. Like there are pops of color that really stand. You know, Brisby's red cloak and the Christmas lights in the Rats of Nim hideout. Like there are moments of beauty and brightness and color. But I bet if you made a color map of this movie, like it uses grays and browns and greens in a way that never feels unpleasant to look at. It's always beautiful, even when it's like mucky and dark.
a lot of earth tones, yeah, for sure.
Yes, a lot of earth tones, exactly.
Yeah. And I feel like for me as a kid, like it's why maybe I gravitated more towards the Disney Renaissance stuff, because it is very poppy and colorful and bright. And like I was thinking about this too with something like Anastasia, where like Anastasia comes out the same year as Hercules, which is just
very different.
Those
movies.
are very different. And like there is I really think that tone though, especially in the 80s where like Disney's doing Oliver and Company, which has a lot of like really dark, fucked up shit. Actually, now that I think about it, but
totally. And Dom
also
DeLuise.
has. Oh yes, it's true.
The most fucked up shit possible, Don Bluth.
But it also has like Billy Joel, and you know,
Yeah.
it is very like fun, and it's trying to be, you know, it's trying to be very cool and all that. And
Nobody's saying why should I worry in The Secret of NIMH. They all are very worried about things they should be worried about.
It's very notable that Land Before Time, I believe, came out within the same month as Oliver and Company.
Wow.
sure,
We mentioned like Fox and the Hound in this, and then like American Tail and probably Great Mouse Detective are like very adjacent. And American Tail is much bigger. It's, I think, just this thing like in the 80s, the children had much more of an interest in like these movies that felt a bit more dangerous than Disney.
Right.
That Disney had lost its touch.
We do have to note, though, that American Tail had Steven Spielberg backing it, too. And that man was on top of the world.
And
in the
Land
late
Before
80s.
Time had him and George come along.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
yeah. It is interesting because I think like a lot of Bluth's movies have a kind of Spielberg Lucas kind of sensibility. I think Bluth tends to veer a bit too much on the silliness and the goofiness at times. Not necessarily in this movie, but like in
Sure.
general. But he does capture a lot of like obviously like the hero's journey is something is what Lucas did, but he captures a lot of that feeling in the best moments of his movies, which I think is like it's kind of it's a weird like kind of mixture of people, like especially watching an American Tail and it's Steven Spielberg presents,
Right.
but I don't know, the more that I kind of like thought about it, I was like, but this actually makes a lot more sense
Well,
than you would think.
Honestly, the more you're bringing this up, the more I realize there's a lot of parallels between like Mrs. Brisby and like Brody and Jaws in terms of just being like kind of like someone
What a
put up
take.
to this task.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, this is so insurmountable. I don't know if I can do it. And instead of a shark, it's like fucking giant tractors and shit
Is
attacking like their
Jeremy
small little town.
the Richard Dreyfuss character?
Well, the Richard Dreyfuss comparison is apt in that I do see like the two of them making eyes at each other, not that dissimilar from Brody. At least that's my
Yeah.
take. But I do love that too with this is
Justin?
crazy. Justin, yes, the Justin character.
The
Just
handsome captain of the guard.
right. I do like how he basically is this character who like is there for the sword fight and to
Yes.
kind of like make brief eyes with Brisby.
He's
Just
bigger
'cause
in the
it's-
book. He's a lot
Right.
more meaningful in the book.
But I just like the fact that he's not like in a worser movie, he would completely overtake the finale as opposed to like the ultimate thing being done by Mrs. Brisby is so crucial with like the
Yeah.
amulet and like that pure of heart thing.
He's there to be like a buffer between Brisby and what she needs to do. Like, he gives her the time to be able to take that final step forward and do, like, save the day herself.
Right. Though I want to mention this now. I might get into this movie in a bit more detail, but I just love the fact that the only way that the fucking shitty direct-to-video sequel ups something up is that Peter Strauss is replaced in the direct-to-video sequel for Justin by William H. Macy.
Whoa.
Like right after he got nominated for Fargo, William H. Macy.
Oh wow.
I mean, that
It's
must have been a
fucking
fun
insane.
weekend for him, recording those lines.
It was like an hour, I'm sure. Joking.
Well, he mispronounced Timmy in one of the takes, so they had him back on Sunday for
He
one
had an
line.
early lunch so he could go in a booth for an hour and fucking do that shit. And it sounds like it. But yeah. I like the fact that like we have once again like some of these characters who feel like they're kind of intimidating to Brisby. Like I love that scene when she, like you were mentioning earlier, when she kind of like actually volunteers to go on the mission and it's like in the middle of like this kind of court of NIMH, as it were. I love that set.
Yes.
The kind of like the golden look of it and
Yes.
everything, and that kind of like people on these high pedestals, and it's like you, a common mouse woman. I don't know if this will work out.
They're dumb. You learned to read from your husband, not from unethical scientists.
I do love a like hidden kingdom, like just the way that they
Yes.
get into the sort of like rat kingdom, whatever you want to call it. Like I just that stuff
awesome.
is so cool. Where they get in the lamp and then it like goes underwater and
Oh,
the,
that's the best
roof
part.
closes and just
Yes.
like it's a kind of thing that I just like love of like discovering this new place that is like so unfamiliar and unknown and like it's literally buried under the ground and like that stuff I think also just it's so like my kind of shit. And then yes, there is a council of rats, which is just very cool. And
Yes.
and this is also just weird. It's weirdly where the movie like another thing I've enjoyed about watching these Don Bluth movies is that they are like 90 minutes max. You know,
Well,
like
yeah, they can't afford to make a longer movie. They gotta,
Yeah, they
they
can't,
gotta
no.
keep it tight.
something that animators nowadays could learn. Not every animated movie needs to be 2 hours. Anyways,
It's a lot easier to make a long movie with CGI.
yeah, we get the sort of history of NIMH, which, again, what the fuck? This movie's about the National Institute of Mental Health.
Yep.
I mean, it's I never put that together that NIMH was that acronym, like, ever. And it's the thing with, like, these Don Bluth movies that have this, like, real, like, edge to them, you know? Like, very, like, dark and weird and, like, it is just so bizarre that this movie, which is about like talking mice and talking crows and stuff, is also about the National Institute of Mental Health doing like these scientific experiments, and it weirdly kind of works, which like it makes no sense because of like just it being the National Institute of Mental Health, but it gives this kind of weird context for there being all these like talking animals, whereas obviously like in like Disney movies, for instance, like they're cute, they're talking animals, like whatever, it's fine. And yeah, it is just it's a great example of Don Bluth taking these kind of darker elements and fusing them with these more kind of like this childlike wonder and this childlike kind of feeling, I guess.
So, though admittedly, that energy is very much straight adaptation from the book. Like, that balance of the small-scale fantastical world of these animals and the real-life things that influence them. That's Robert C. O'Brien, baby. Like, that's right out of the book.
Well, yeah, I just love the fact that we kind of mentioned this earlier, but like Bluth adding a lot more like the fantastical elements, I think it makes like really sells that kind of massive scale thing we were talking about. Or
Totally.
like to the Rats of Nim, this is like evolution has changed and animals are
Yes.
completely different from what they previously were. We are stepping like through the evolutional planes that like took centuries for man to do within like a year, maybe, in terms of just
Absolutely.
how like, and it's such a fascinating like idea of like this rapid evolution, but I like the fact that it's also not treated as just like the everything has changed possible. It's like, no, we're evolving, but it's like we gotta like like catch up to ourselves, basically. I think the implication is like the rats are most of the ones that have been experimented on, but you still have like the great owl, who I don't know if they specifically imply was experimented on, but it's just like almost this other fantastical thing. It's like, oh, there are other intelligent beings. I can come out of my magical
Yeah,
tree.
I think just owls are wise as fuck. I think he's
it's
just was
true.
waiting for another species to catch up to him. Like,
Right. Yes.
It's the kind of like unknown and unexplained thing about this movie. And with, like I mentioned, the Dark Crystal, like that movie has a similar quality of like there's things in that movie I just you can't explain. Like maybe some people on the fucking like Dark Crystal subreddit have figured it out or
yeah,
something, but
they read the comics.
yeah, but like it's it's not important almost, and it just kind of helps create this sort of otherworldly world, and like I love that kind of stuff. I think it's great.
Well, and especially the fact that they sell like the scale with another thing we haven't really mentioned, but I love the brief glimpses of humans we get being so casually domestic with
Yeah.
stuff like when they call the farmer guy and he's like, "So now you're gonna go over there and exterminate? Yeah, I want him out of here." Oh, and there's no charge, I assume.
Yes, that's a great detail. I love that. Farmer Fitzgibbons being money conscious. That's
Right.
wonderful.
This
Yes, that very like blue collar farmer who's just like, yeah, we want to get rid of this magical society that's building up in my fucking barn.
Well, he doesn't know that. He just sees rats and sees wires are missing from his house and are like,
Right,
they're
right.
up
He
to
just sees that.
something.
Yeah, just get rid of the rose bush. It's fine. Whatever. There's no
I
magical
like
creatures
that.
in that thing.
Yeah, I like that he's like I don't know anything about any like supernatural powers or whatever, but like the traps don't work for some reason. Like there is
Yeah.
just that little detail, and
Yes.
I also thought while watching this that this kind of weirdly uh pairs well with a movie we're doing later this season, Fantastic Mr. Fox, which
Yes.
like
They're of
also about a
kind,
farm who has
definitely.
this this sort of ecosystem and stuff like that. Like it's very interesting that yeah, I just kind of made that connection while I was watching it.
That movie does have a lot of kind of like the Bluth isms, which I think we might reference when we get to that particular episode. But I do like there's certain other like some of the more interesting animation I think has been very Bluth inspired, like Over the Garden Wall, amongst many other influences.
Oh,
I
sure.
feel a lot of Bluth, in particular, like the
Yeah.
Auntie Whispers character on Over the Garden Wall, which feels like a fucking Bluth creation. That whole thing, that whole episode, I think feels very in common with him. But yeah, I think it's so fascinating when once again just I want to really detail exactly what goes on here for Bluth because this movie ends up coming out makes $14 million off its like about $7 million budget, so
Yeah,
kind of like
good
doing
for them.
decently, but then really exploding on video. I think that's a big thing is that Bluth is one of the
Mm-hmm.
first people to really get the like attention of like, oh, we're making a lot of money off like selling these video cassettes of his movies, and that ends up allowing him to get like an American Tail made, which is even bigger a success and has him like graduating to the big leagues of animation. And then he does like Land Before Time with Lucas and Spielberg, and there's some back and forth. Like Spielberg had them cut 20 minutes of stuff out of that movie,
Oh, wow.
which I think like really, which is why that movie's 68 minutes long.
I know.
Um,
Yes.
and
That's crazy.
right. So I think that's what ended up kind of catapulting. Like, well, I'm going to go over to MGM and I'm going to start doing stuff like All Dogs Go to Heaven, which is
Right.
the first one that doesn't work because I keep mentioning, oh, they would do so well. And that one came out around the same time as The Little Mermaid. And that's about the beginning of the end when you get to like Rockadoodle opening up against Beauty and the Beast or Thumbelina and Lion King. It just feels like he's trying to, like we mentioned earlier, catch up. And then it's so sad to truly see that like by the time he gets to like sort of the end of his career and he's doing like we mentioned Anastasia, which feels like an admission of defeat, and then he tries to be like, well, guess what, that defeat is going to transfer to Titan AE, which is more experimental and new, and I'm really going to like open up what animation can do at this point. And that movie bombs so hard that he just has not really done much of anything. He tried to get a Dragon's Lair movie off the ground, And you have like
Yeah.
Kickstarter stuff around it,
Mm.
which if you've seen that pitch reel, it's disappointing because it feels clearly like too low a budget to create like the insanity of those games
Yeah.
and the bigness. And yeah, it's really just kind of dissipated. And I think it's so sad that like he really wanted to revolutionize, what Disney was doing. He wanted to like really separate from you guys aren't doing the interesting stuff. I'm doing it now. And then because of a lot of, issues with like the animation departments like constantly like crumbling around him and everything, having to move from like Utah where he's from over to like LA to try and do some stuff and then over to Ireland to try and animate stuff. Like it just is like it's such a tragic story to see like all that fall apart and weirdly the entire medium of hand drawn animation that he was so devoted to completely collapses with his career really.
Mm.
It's really fucking sad to think
Yeah.
about.
This just popped into my head, but are you both familiar with like how James Baxter, who is a wonderful Disney animator from the Disney Renaissance, has gone on to like do little bits of guest animation in like Cartoon Network shows.
Adventure Time had the episode with the horse, right? The James Baxter,
Yes.
right? Yeah. Yeah.
And there's some shots he did for Steven Universe that are like really wonderful. Like I wonder what would have happened if Don Bluth had like connected with a younger generation of traditional animators for television in like the 2000s 2010s and like taken a step down like pride wise maybe, but it would have been a chance for his style, his work to reach a new generation. I wonder how that would have gone down if that's what he had decided to do.
I mean, it's so interesting because, like, yeah, he only made one movie in my lifetime. Like, I was born in 1998, and Titan AE's 2000. I would never
So I
have
guess
seen that
two
movie,
in my
obviously.
lifetime then, 96.
Yeah, and so, like, it's kind of a reason why, like, again, like I said, like, Land Before Time, All Dogs Go to Heaven were played in, like, elementary school for me.
Yeah.
Like, I'm talking, like, second grade. Like, obviously, those are just kind of, like, movies that children watch at that age, but like
Sure.
none of his other movies really permeated beyond that, and like it is a reason I think why I had just had no exposure to his movies is because he just didn't do a lot. And like I remember hearing about the sort of like Dragon's Lair pitch that he wanted to do and wanted to kickstart it and stuff like that, but like it's a very interesting point. And like I think you see like the Adventure Time thing and Steven Universe connection is really kind of interesting because I love that era of like Cartoon Network.
Yeah.
It feels so indebted to a lot of like it doesn't feel indebted to like Disney necessarily. It feels indebted to these kind of weirdos who are doing stuff on the side that isn't the sort of mainstream thing. It like what is the show that they all come from? All like the Adventure Time and Steven Universe people. It's got like the pirate theme.
The Marvelous
Flapjack.
Adventures of Flapjack.
Flapjack, yes, like
Yes.
that show. I remember I remember watching it and having this really like rough aesthetic and going like, whoa, what is this? And like, I don't know, it that feels kind of a bit Bluthian, I guess.
Yeah.
Like it feels kind of edgier than a lot of what is in the mainstream. So yeah, it's very interesting.
Oh, what's his name? Who made that show? It's on the tip of my tongue. He also directed the Angry Birds movie 2.
Is it?
Oh,
It's Van Oren, I think.
Yes, Throp Van Orman.
Yes.
That is absolutely right.
Yeah.
He's a lot of fun. He also plays Little Gideon on Gravity Falls. That's his other major
okay.
contribution to that era of animation.
Yeah, a lot of those, I think modern people really do with something from Bluth. But at the same time, I think there's also this other thing with like, another animation person I might talk about in a bit. But there is that kind of weird thing where there's a tragic arc, but at the same time, there is an admission of like, Bluth kind of lost the way, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Even without like, there's obviously all the issues with like resources and stuff. But when it comes to like, by the time we get to like the late 80s and he's doing All Dogs Go to Heaven, and that specific style kind of like that's the breaking point. It feels like his wires are kind of frayed, like especially with like I can't emphasize enough that Rockadoodle feels like a weird fucking nightmare that I'm so shocked was like made by a major studio and was at least released to some degree because it's just like it's chaos being thrown at the screen at all times. we never really give enough admission to like Bluth as much as there's like a bit of, that tragic artist thing. There's a bit of vanity. I mean, every single production
Oh,
company is
totally.
Don Bluth Ireland, even to the degree that
Totally.
like Bryan, Pebble and the Penguin has no credited director on it because of how poorly that was made. They literally just cut
Oof.
from like the screenwriters in the opening credits to a Don Bluth Ireland Productions Limited
Oof.
work.
But
Like,
I can imagine if you spend the first 20 years of your career, give or take, like 10, 15, whatever it is, under the Walt Disney banner, when you start your own animation studio, you're gonna stick your name on it. Like,
yes.
did y'all catch what other 90s animation luminary got his start in on The Secret of NIMH?
No, who?
Bruce Timm.
Oh.
Wow.
I checked the IMDb afterwards because I saw his name in the credits and I couldn't believe it. It's his first feature credit. He'd worked on 2 television projects, but Bruce Timm like got a big start on this movie.
Which I mean,
Interesting.
the kind of darkness definitely kind of makes sense for something like the like Batman the animated series, or
I
like
could see him learning a lot from having worked under Bluth when he goes to Warner Brothers to make a bunch of great, TV cartoons.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess another part of sort of this like that kind of degradation of the 2D animation is the direct-to-video sequel stuff, which this movie does have a direct-to-video sequel, Secret of NIMH 2: Timmy to the Rescue, in which the sort of MacGuffin of this movie, which is little Timmy, the boy who is like nearly dying the entire time,
Yes.
ends up becoming our protagonist who leaves to the Thorn Valley, leaves his mother and sisters behind to never show back up in the movie again, which is great. Great use of those characters. Goes to the Thorn Valley, ends up staying there for like as he matures into a man, to follow in his father's footsteps. And then he comes across this girl mouse who's not one of his sisters, but just like a girl mouse he can have a relationship with, voiced by Hayden Welsh. Speaking of Adventure Time, Princess Bubblegum. It's just the
Oh.
Princess Bubblegum fucking voice
Yeah,
the whole
Hayden Walsh,
movie.
yeah. Cool.
Yes, who's like, oh hey, it turns out that I escaped from NIMH. The rats who in the movie, which the opening of this movie makes the fatal mistake of showing animation from the original Secret of NIMH.
No!
It's like a prologue, and then it cuts like straight to video bullshit. Like, oh no,
Oh, no.
this is such a steep drop in quality. But it's like, oh hey, you have to like come with me because those rats from NIMH who you thought died ended up living in like underneath the laboratory. Basically, I'm one of those fucking rats, and so we have to like go over and save them, and including
Wait, is
they
it the
reveal
mice
like,
that get sucked into the vent?
yes,
Is it
the vents.
Oh my
they
god.
end up living. Right. They retcon
Oh
that.
my god.
That they're alive, and so they end up
Okay.
going over there. As it turns out that my brother Martin, the other rat that was Will Wheaton in
Right.
the original, is one of the rats that are stuck inside the laboratory now. And it turns out that like he's been corrupted and he's experimenting on animals. Now he's voiced by Eric Idle because he's corrupted.
Oh no.
That's what this fucking movie does. It's also 68 minutes long, and guess what? It's fucking terrible. It's everything. It's a bad musical.
No.
I was so gobsmacked by it, really, because it just feels like this is on either end of sort of that animation like decline from like the early 80s through to like the late 90s. It's like on one side is the original beautiful Secret of NIMH, and on the other side is this fucking dog shit that's got its name on it. It's fascinating.
And Dom DeLuise comes back, of course, as Jeremy, right?
It might shock you that Dom DeLuise came back, like he did for All Dogs Go to Heaven 2, without Bluth.
The 3 American Tail sequels. I was looking
Right.
at his IMDb. I was like, he did not miss a beat. He came back for all of them.
Nope, he the man loved to check. God bless him for it.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's so fascinating, especially with things gone down. Like I don't know, do you see any world where like the Don Bluth style or even 2D in general would come back, Joey? Do you see an opening for that in the modern animation landscape?
So, this is my secret wish. One day, someone will be in charge of the Walt Disney Company, most likely. I would love to see an independent 2D renaissance, but I think it would be a challenge. But I mean, obviously, there's like Cartoon Saloon, like that are doing amazing work out of Ireland. Like there are really great 2D animated movies still happening. Robot Dreams just last year is like an extraordinarily good traditionally animated movie. I mean, that's not on cells, you know, that's digital, but it looks amazing. Like that's a great movie. But like someday, someone in power is going to realize just how profitable a nostalgia play it would be to make a really damn good traditionally 2D animated feature again. And it's going to cost a lot of money, and then it's going to make $1 billion, and then maybe we'll get more of them. Like, I genuinely believe it will happen someday. But unfortunately, I think it will happen when someone in power realizes it would be profitable.
That is a really interesting. Yeah, the nostalgia play is kind of feels like the way that this happens, though.
Like, can you imagine if I think Ron Musker just came out of retirement to go back to Disney?
Oh.
Can you imagine if Musker and Clements made another traditionally 2D animated film with a team of Disney artists who desperately want to learn to animate traditionally again, like the new generation of animators? You know, they kicked ass with Moana in CG. Like, they haven't lost a beat in the last, 15 years. Like, just let them direct another traditionally animated feature with a team of hungry young Disney artists, because the animation industry has so many people looking for jobs right now because it's not, something's wrong. They're not greenlighting anything. Let these animators make cool shit. They will work for not enough money overtime to make art, and they should be paid enough money, and they should be paid overtime, but they will also just do it because they're freaking hungry for it. They love it.
I mean, I was talking about this when we did Fantasia last week, and I was kind of saying, like, we were talking obviously about this kind of state that Disney specifically is in, and how stale a lot of their movies feel, and how kind of devoid of any kind of real creativity and human craft, because of like the fact that they are going for a kind of like technology forward. It has to look as photorealistic as possible. And I was saying, like, look at Fantasia and just like, just do that. Like, do some, like, obviously not, it's very difficult, and like,
I mean, the real problem is that they just don't have the infrastructure for it anymore. Like, that's the biggest thing. Is my understanding is that the 2D animation department at Disney now is like 9 people, and they made that Once Upon a Studio short last year that like Glenn Keane worked on.
Yeah.
And this is so stupid. Whoever did the animation for Donald Duck on Hot Ones, which I think it was Eric Goldberg, who's an amazing Disney animator who worked on the Genie back in the day. Like, that shit looked amazing. Like, give them some money and let them make some more freaking shorts. Like, just let's do it. They're out. They're still alive. We're not out of 2D animators. Let them do it and train new people. Come on.
Yeah, but it is interesting where you're mentioning kind of like the lack of infrastructure. There's also just the factor of like, I don't think if there is a 2D renaissance, there will never be another like cell animation one, though, because that's just like technology that's completely like, even by the time of like the Renaissance, they're starting, what was it, the Capstone program, right?
Yeah.
Yes,
the Caps program, right? Which like they did that with Anastasia has a very similar like animation style to it by that point.
I am totally happy with a traditionally animated hand-drawn movie done with computers. I don't care. Like, I will be just fine with that. Would it be cool if they used a bunch of old techniques again? Yeah, absolutely. But is that also prohibitively expensive and really hard? Yes. Like, there's a reason why people started doing things digitally.
Right, but I think that it's just a thing of like, I don't think like a Don Bluth style really can like translate even to like past cell animation, sadly. Even like Anastasia and Tiny E have those kind of like some vibes of that, but there is something kind of like that tactility is kind of missing from it, like Bryan was kind of mentioning earlier. There's like, because my dream always, like, I love that style so much as a kid, I always wanted to see a series of unfortunate events movie animated like the Don Bluth style. That was always like what I wanted.
Yeah,
I think
I'd
that
watch
would look
that
like
in a heartbeat.
so like I kept imagining like fucking, okay, what is his name? The main villain, Count what is it?
Olaf.
Olaf, right? Count Olaf. Right. I'm sorry. I didn't want to say Olaf because I'm like, that's not the fucking snowman. it's not him.
It is Olaf, right? I'm
Right,
not mistaken.
I believe
Yeah,
it's
it is.
yes, it is Olaf. Yes,
Yeah.
but yeah, I always wanted to see like that character animated with like a prominent Adam's apple, like Bluth always did, and like that kind of sharp
Mm.
shin and like the nose and everything. I always wanted to see that, but I just feel like even in that case, like whatever we do get is still going to be a bit removed from that kind of Bluth style. I don't think we never really quite capture this again.
This sort of like darker edge, this kind of like really like kind of fucked up filled like kind of animation, this kind of rough animation, I feel like is a lot of like stop motion kind of became obviously like the Henry
Sure.
Selick thing, and like a personal favorite of mine over the past few years, like the Guillermo del Toro Pinocchio. Like I feel
Hell
like
yeah.
this sort of darker style, this kind of more edgier style, is more done in stop motion. Obviously, like Leica is more of a studio and has a bit more like, but like their movies also like Kubo and the Two Strings has some really dark and
Yeah.
like really sad stuff that would not feel out of step in the Don Bluth movie, for instance. And like I think I mentioned last time, but like I love that movies have a bit more of that like texture to them. Like I mentioned, the TMNT movie Mutant Mayhem,
Love
which
that
has the
movie.
kind of like
Yes.
rough, kind of zero, almost
The
Xerox
Notebook style, the like
yeah,
doodle
yeah.
energy.
Yes. We've been talking for quite a bit about Secret of NIMH, so why don't we just wrap up stuff here? Joe, your final thoughts on Don Bluth's The Secret of NIMH?
I think this movie rocks. I think that for any parents out there who have a kid who's at just the right age to give them something that might give them some light nightmares right before bed, this is a perfect movie to share with your children. For any adults out there who haven't watched a really good animated movie in a while, throw on this one. It's 80 minutes of your time. You'll be entranced the whole time, and you might come away with a deeper appreciation for this art form that you might not have had. And you know, like we were saying, there's a whole like Bryan was aptly putting, there's a whole generation that kind of missed out on Bluth, largely myself included. I've kind of had to play catch up, and this movie is pretty undoubtedly a slam dunk in terms of his catalog, and is very worth spending some time with.
Bryan.
Look, I struggled a bit with Bluth's other films a little bit, and I think part of it is because a lot of those goofier elements, a lot of the sillier elements that overtake the other Bluth movies feel really indicative of a lot of the animation that I grew up with, the kind of like very like lowest common denominator, like this is just for children to put like just to kind of distract them kind of animation. It feels a lot like that. A lot of like the sequels, what you're talking about, just kind of like not just poorly animated, but just like really condescending and really like talking down to their audiences, where I really loved just the dark tone that this has. I completely agree with what you said, Joey, earlier. Like I do think that like kids should be scared a bit more, and you should have these, it's okay to have not necessarily the kind of manipulative darkness like like Bambi being shot, or some of the stuff that Pixar can do from time to time, which is good, but is also admittedly very manipulative. But just kind of creating a tone, creating an atmosphere, creating this world that is grounded in reality, with things like it being set on a farm. Once again, it being the National Institute of Mental Health. It's so insane. But also having this kind of otherworldly quality, this thing that is kind of very ambiguous, and like again, the thing with the Great Owl, where he's not, and even Jeremy, like he can speak, but like he wasn't experimented on or something. Like it is the perfect balance of what I've mentioned of the Black Cauldron, of just having incredible vibes, just like a movie that you can just like have on in the background as this sort of mood setting, and also I think just has the perfect balance for Bluth of tackling these darker themes, these more serious themes in a way that isn't condescending, in a way that is like really earnestly trying to give you this journey, this adventure, this kind of this quest. I really, it's my favorite of the Bluth movies, even though again, like I have found things to like about a lot of them, but I have struggled a lot. And yeah, I would also again just recommend it to like anyone who loves like fantasy movies in general. Like, you know, I mentioned like Lord of the Rings and stuff like that, and this has a not too dissimilar quality in terms of like feeling like a completely original universe. And yeah, I really enjoyed that about it. It's also just really, really fascinating, as we've all been talking about, to just look at when this was made and what separated it from the mainstream Disney animation. And I just find that element of it, as someone who again is very interested in like cinema history and just kind of like the context of when and why and how something was made. Like Bluth is such a fascinating figure, even if I don't always love a lot of his stuff. But this is a really, really great movie that has again just some of the most incredible visuals and atmosphere that any animated movie has. Maybe like it's also just so specific to me. I've talked a lot about like just my love of this kind of dark fantasy and just kind of like mysterious quality that it has. And yeah, really good stuff.
Like I mentioned before, I have a lot of like affection for the Don Bluth style and some of those earlier movies, even though I think some of them have dwindled in my estimation. I still think there's a sort of fascinating, like pure artistic expression that comes out of like the Bluth movies that isn't really as present in that kind of right before the Renaissance era for Disney. And I think it really is so fascinating to like look at that grand scale, like I mentioned, the kind of trailblazer to burnout kind of arc of Bluth's whole career is so fascinating when you really consider the fact that like few animation directors like this had like an auteurist kind of reputation. Because like earlier Disney movies have like tons of animation directors and stuff, like credits all over the place. He's one of the few people who had like a real opportunity to show an authentic kind of auteur spirit that a couple of the Disney animators since have done, like Musker and Clements, amongst other people. But it's very rare, and I think it's so interesting to see a guy really come out the gate with this movie, which is so like lush and beautiful, and yet upsetting and dark, and has like all these like bigger concepts that's going for, and really trying to like show that like animation, you know, that classic thing that Brad Bird always says, that like animation is not a genre, it's an art form. And there's a lot that you can say where like this movie doesn't feel like a kid's movie. It feels more like a family movie in the way that like anybody in the family can get something out of this movie. I think it's got like such a fascinating, you know, texture and atmosphere, like we're mentioning, that doesn't like has peaks in the later Bluth movies, but it never feels as like authentic and singular as it does here. And to see him once again go have that eventually dwindle, and then have him be like, all right, I guess you guys are into this. Well, how about I do this? Having kitchen sink movies that feel kind of desperate, and then giving a bit of leeway to Disney, and then trying to really advance things, and then going kaput. Once again, just one of the great tragic director arcs of all time. But I'm glad that we have something like NIMH that feels like the purest distillation of that. That I just recommend to anybody, especially if you're not somebody who's nostalgic and didn't grow up with the Don Bluth movies. I would probably direct you to Secret of NIMH. First, at least.
I can attest to that.
Yeah.
Right. Yes, you were the control for our experiment, and it worked. We're experimenting on Bryan now in his little rat cage. But let's move on to our next experiment of Between the Lines. So on every episode of Simmons the Letter, we do a segment called Between the Lines, in which Brian, myself, and a guest, if they are so inclined, recommend another film that kind of fits the criteria of, eye for indie animation, or has some kind of tangential relation to the movie we're talking about today. And Brian, you're going first. What's your recommendation for this edition of Between the Lines?
Well, speaking of dark and fucked up, I'm recommending a film from Don Hertzfeldt, his 2012 film "It's Such a Beautiful Day." Your point that you made towards the end of us talking about Secret of NIMH of like an auteurist animator is so interesting, and like is a relatively new concept as you've been describing, as I've thought about it. Like it only is, after Bluth that you have like your Henry Selick's, your Brad Bird's, your et cetera, and Don Hertzfeldt is one of them. He has a lot of animated shorts, and I believe this movie combines a few of his short films, but also has a few new segments, and his style, which is so difficult to describe, but is incredibly simple and minimal, and is also some of the most audacious and weird and experimental and hallucinatory and surreal animation that we've seen. And he is a guy who is a true independent artist, and it's funny. I think the first time that I heard of Don Hertzfeldt was the Simpsons couch gag that he did,
Yes.
which is also
Yeah.
very, very insane. But this movie, loose plot of it, I did not rewatch it for this because if you've seen it, I'm not putting myself through this again. But it's about a man named Bill who is going through his day-to-day life, and suffers this sort of unknown illness where he is basically having these hallucinations about his past, about other people's pasts, his family, his loved ones. It's very short. It's 62 minutes. It is incredibly upsetting. I cannot emphasize that enough. There are certain elements in this that are not only just some of the most like kind of chilling and true like depictions of like mental illness, but there's a detail in here about his mother that I genuinely I cannot watch it because it is just one of the most like heartbreaking things I have ever seen. It involves a notebook that he finds. If you've seen the movie, you may know what I'm talking about. I just find some of that stuff to be like so unbelievably like, I don't want to say bleak, but just human. I love this movie. I think it is like, if there is a case for animation as a piece of art, like we talked about with Fantasia, like you could put this should be in a museum. I think It's Such a Beautiful Day fits into that because it is not like beautifully animated like a lot of like the Disney stuff or even some of the Don Bluth stuff. It is rough, and you can tell that there's a handmade quality to this, and it is also just wild. I mean, I use the term hallucinatory, but like it feels so daring in what it's trying to do, and it's using animation to do that, and it's just, yeah, it's a movie that is incredibly difficult for me to sit through, but I often will just like want to watch it because I think that Hertzfeldt, his style is so singular and is so fascinating, and just I love looking at it. I love also like a sub recommendation, but his World of Tomorrow shorts I think are also just really, really incredible. Yeah, so that is my recommendation. Thomas, I believe you have seen this, but yeah, I'm curious to get yours and Joey's opinion on this movie and Don Hertzfeldt in general.
Brian, would it shock you to say that I haven't seen a movie?
I have been on the edge of getting into Don Hertzfeldt for years. I am very aware of his work, but that barrier of entry of you will be mesmerized by this, and also it will completely break your heart, has
Yeah.
been a difficult hurdle for me to leap.
Yeah.
But
I co-sign what Joey says. The only thing I've seen is that first World of Tomorrow short, which I think is a
Oh,
beautiful sci-fi masterpiece, but also like so existentially crushing to me.
yes,
So I'm like, I don't
existential.
know if I can handle something like that's 4 times as long as this, Brian.
Yes, his movies are very philosophical and existential in a way that I find like once again are not condescending in any way and are just incredibly like human and I just yes it is a barrier to entry. I would definitely not recommend it, you know, if you're it will ruin your day I guess, but
yeah.
it
But
is
Brian, it's such a beautiful
this
day. Why would you ruin that?
Yeah.
It's such a beautiful day.
look it is such a beautiful day, and the titular sequence in which that phrase is said is just again I cannot put into words. It is 62 minutes. It is relatively short. I do want to emphasize as kind of down as this movie may be, it will change your life, you know, not to oversell it or anything, but it is one of those movies that, and I feel this way about like someone like Hayao Miyazaki, where you watch one of his movies and you just have like you feel like you have a new outlook, a new perspective on what life is and what life can be. And I definitely feel that way about Don Hertzfeldt. And again, for someone like him to do this solo is, you know,
Oh wow!
obviously it is
it
a
is
lot.
an entirely singularly made film.
Yes.
It's just Dawn. That's amazing. Okay, I don't
And
think I knew that.
He has, I believe, distributed his own stuff. Like he has a Vimeo page where like you can
Right.
rent a lot of his stuff. It's
Yeah.
how I've seen like a lot of most of his movies. But that element of it I think is so impressive. And again, like you look at the animation style and like in like the poster, for instance, and stuff, and you're like, oh, okay, I see what this is going for here. But he is also just stretching the bounds of what animation can do, and there's no way for me to kind of describe that without like just go see it. I think I would recommend to anyone, but again, be prepared for what it might do to you.
Well, to contrast with a super fucked up animated movie that Brian is recommending, I'm recommending a different super fucked up animated movie, but specifically from 1985, The Adventures of Mark Twain, also known as Comet Quest. This is a film directed by Will Vinton, his only feature film directorial effort. If you don't know out there, Will Vinton was a very famous animator who mainly did the sort of claymation style that was literal, like actual claymation, not even like traditional stop motion puppets, like literally like molding clay into different shapes. He was probably most famous for like the California Raisins commercials from the 80s, but he also did stuff like the Noid from the Domino's pizza advertisements as well, and the later on his CG animation department would create the modern M&M's commercials. They're still
Oh.
running to some degree. Like he
Oh.
established a
I
lot of
didn't
those
know that. That's
characters.
cool.
Yeah, he established a lot of those characters in the waning days of the studio. I side recommendation is the documentary Clay Dreams,
I've got to watch that. It's been on my
which,
watch list forever.
if you don't know, there is also very tied to Don Bluth in that Will Vinton was like incredibly popular in the 80s. He had a downturn in the 90s, and his company ended up being taken over by a little guy named Phil Knight. So his son could start
Travis.
animated things, and then end up becoming Leica. So
The ultimate Nepo baby saving stop motion, but he is the ultimate Nepo baby, Travis Knight.
which that documentary also does a beautiful job of kind of exploring Will Vinton, very much admitting about like, oh yeah, I made a bunch of terrible financial decisions that completely collapsed that company. It's not just that he ended up like he bought because I fucked up the company basically, and it's like it's really fascinating. But with this movie, we mainly follow the a bunch of kids who are all very familiar characters to the world of Mark Twain, like your Becky Thatcher, Huck Finn, and Tom Sawyer are actual characters who go up to like this big air ship that's on the ground is about to take off that Mark Twain is in, and Mark Twain is like, "Hey, I'm gonna travel this cosmos in my airship," And the kids tag along, and he's like, "Oh, I can't believe you kids tagged along. That's fine, but don't touch anything on here." And the kids proceed to touch various different things, including a portal that leads them into different Mark Twain stories. So it's kind of an anthology film where they're kind of like jumping around through stuff like the Jumping Frog of Calvert County, or his version of Adam and Eve's the Adam and Eve story through the Adam and Eve Diaries, which he wrote. It's based very much in the stories, but most people would probably know this movie for a really fucked up bit that really went around the internet like about 15 or so years ago, where these kids go through one portal that leads them to a mysterious figure who forms out of nothing and is like this sort of body that's a statue who has like a mask on a stick that he holds in one hand that is his face. And they're like, "Oh, what's your name?" And he says, "Satan." And then they proceed to follow this guy as he creates a little civilization that have little clay people in the sand. He's like, "Let's play a game." And these clay people come to life and form a civilization, all this other stuff. And then he's like, "This bores me. I'm gonna send an earthquake, and then I'm gonna send a tidal wave, and I'm gonna kill all these fucking little guys." And that just happens in the middle of this movie. And then they like kind of like, "Oh, let's move on to like, I don't know, the frog is racing people."
Oh my
Or
God.
whatever. And it's an incredibly dark, upsetting movie, but it's got that Will Vinton style, which is so unique even with the stop motion. With, like I'm mentioning, he's literally forming these creatures like mouth movements with like his own fingerprints. You can see like the thumbprints and everything
I
on
love
these
that
characters, and even the way that they move. There's a weird thing where like because of his style, like the clay puppets would move constantly, so it does kind of look like they're always on a swivel. Like I loved in the documentary, he explained at one point, like we did all our initial shorts as following wino characters because that's the only way we could explain why they like bumble around a lot because they're drunk, which is very funny. But yeah, The Adventures of Mark Twain, an incredibly weird, odd movie that also just came out to relative obscurity because Will Vinton wanted to make it a much more like dark movie to sell toward like college kids, and this got released by a place called Clubhouse Pictures specifically through their family-friendly label. And shockingly, it didn't do very well, and Will Vinton never got to make another like theatrical length movie, which is a shame because this movie is incredibly fascinating and has similar vibes to Bluth, but with a bit more of that like stop motion texture to it. Joey, I know you're an animation person, but have you seen this movie at all?
I have not seen it. I've heard of it. I think I did a deep dive into what Will Vinton had done around the time Clay Dream came out. And also, I'm trying to remember if there's a brief Will Vinton section in that excellent Aardman documentary. I feel like there might be like a tangent about other stop motion at the time. But no, I've never seen it. It sounds like I'd probably like it. Like, it sounds weird and fucked up and cool. I'll probably check it out at some point. I'll definitely watch Clay Dream, at least. That's very much up my alley.
For sure. But Brian, does this fucked up little movie sound interesting to you?
It does a little bit, to be honest with you. I'm vaguely familiar with Will Vinton, but I'm specifically interested in it because you mentioned it has a kind of like actual claymation aesthetic, which, yeah, like now come to think of it, most of the stop motion stuff that I've seen has not been like the traditional claymation. It has been like your Aardman, your Leica, which is incredibly impressive in its own right, obviously, but is a different thing.
Yeah, those are like maquettes usually, like, you know, replace face puppets. They're different vibes.
Yes.
Yeah, but I've never seen something quite like this necessarily. So I am interested, especially knowing his other work. I think is like really fascinating as well. The M&M's commercial and stuff like that.
Brian, have you ever looked up a picture of Will Vinton?
Oh, yes.
I just did.
He's the most amazing looking man. He's just got the most iconic mustache of all time.
He's an IRL Pringles man, and we love him.
He kind of is, actually. It's perfectly manicured. Like, how do you...
All right,
God.
What a legend.
All the way up to his
Goodness.
end, he still had that fucking mustache, yeah. It's incredible. But, Joey, what's your recommendation for Between the Lines?
Yes, so I have a film and then a brief aside on something that The Secret of NIMH heavily inspired that I want your lovely listeners to know about. The film I will be recommending is a French 2D animated movie from 2023, but I think it came out technically in the States in 2024, called Chicken for Linda, which is a lovely movie. It's got a truly stunning painterly art style. If you look up like the trailer or pictures of it, you'll see very quickly that a lot of the characters are solidly one color. The world is sort of, watercolor's the wrong word, but it's very French and very painterly. And like The Secret of NIMH, it is a movie about a widowed mother going above and beyond for her child, where basically there is a misunderstanding early in the film. She gets very upset with her daughter about something that was not her daughter's fault. And when she realizes her mistake, she begs for forgiveness, and her daughter says, I would like you to make me chicken with peppers, which is part of one of her final memories with her father. And her mother goes, okay, I'll make it happen, but there is a general strike in Paris that day, and so she cannot easily get the ingredients to make this dish, and so chaos ensues as there's an adventure to find chicken for Linda. And it's a beautiful movie. There's some original songs, which are very nice. There's some song sequences. And I watched it on Criterion Channel last year. I think it's still there. I think it's one of those movies that doesn't rotate out. I think you can watch it on Criterion Channel quite easily. And it's wonderful. Have either of you heard of this movie at all?
I had not heard of it until you said you were going to recommend it. I'm looking at the trailer now, and I think it's stellar. I think especially it almost looks impressionistic.
Yes,
its art style.
I think that's a correct vibe.
Yeah, it looks especially with like the way that the lines kind of disappear on the characters and whatnot. And yes, it is on Criterion Channel currently.
Yes, Bryan, if you like 2D animated movies that feel like rough in that way of like you can see pencil marks or you can see the art changing based on how it was drawn, I think you'll like the style of this movie.
Yeah, I remember when this came out, just because I generally like to have my kind of ear to the ground when it comes to international films, especially when they're animated. It is one of those cases though, kind of like Robot Dreams, where they take so long to come out in the States, even when they have a distributor like Neon, that I just wasn't aware that it had just completely slipped my mind.
Yeah.
But yeah, I very much would like to see it. It looks very cool, especially seeing this on Criterion and also seeing that it is 73 minutes.
Yes, it is
again,
brief.
I love that.
It is in and out. This every year when the Annie Award nominations come out, I try to watch as many of the best independent and best studio features as I can from that 10. And I always end up seeing something cool I wouldn't have seen otherwise. And last year it was Chicken for Linda. And then my brief other recommendation is for any fans of D&D actual play out there. There is a season of Dropout's Dimension 20 called Burrow's End, which is heavily inspired by The Secret of NIMH. It is a family of stoats discovering a community of stoats that are highly intelligent and have built their own little society. And I'm dancing around the source of their intelligence because it's kind of a reveal midway through. But they similarly to Secret of NIMH, they take a how do we turn science into magic sort of aesthetic. And there's also some completely fucked up, amazing battle sets in it because it is a video, is a filmed show. And at one point, there is a battle inside the corpse, the reanimated corpse of a bear, which is fucking amazing. It's a great 10 episode series. And if you like sort of the aesthetic of this realistic but still kind of magical dark fantasy, I think you will quite enjoy Burrow's End. I highly recommend it.
Interesting.
Very cool, actually. My D&D knowledge extends to the 5 hours of Baldur's Gate 3 I've played before I got severely overwhelmed. But I do love the aesthetic. I'm kind of I wear the band T-shirt without knowing the only knowing like their most popular song in that way. But
There you go. Well,
yeah,
the nice
very
thing
cool.
about stuff like Burrow's End is you get to sort of learn the mechanics as you're watching, but the world is so distinct from any like D&D lore that you don't really need to know anything coming in other than to just enjoy the story.
Okay, very cool, very cool.
All right.
Well, before we head out, let's go ahead and just repeat our titles to recommend to people out there in case you want to add to your watch list or whatnot. Brian, repeat your title.
Yes, I had Don Hertzfeldt's 2012 film "It's Such a Beautiful Day."
And I had Will Vinton's 1985 deeply upsetting claymation film, The Adventures of Mark Twain.
And I had, oh my goodness, I don't know the director of Chicken for Linda, but French.
It's
Go ahead.
Ciara Malta and Sebastian Lundubach. Apologies, mispronounced that.
Yes, fantastic. Chicken for Linda, which you can find on Criterion Channel, and Dimension 20 Burrow's End, which you can find on the Dropout streaming service. The first episode is free on YouTube if you'd like to give it a try.
Well, on that note, we want to, just thank some people out there. Like, we want to thank Burial Grid for our music for the show. Purchase music at burialgrid.com. Thanks to Michelle Kyle for our artwork. Find her at MicheKyle96 over on Twitter. And thanks to our supporters over on Patreon, our Cineast patrons over at patreon.com/cinema. Number 2 letter, where for just $1 a month, y'all get access to bonus stuff we record. Like we should have some audio reviews out there for you of some recent releases. And in July, we're going to be doing a Back to the Future full franchise big podcast. So that'll be fun to do. To record that and revisit those movies. And also, we have the Marco Polo show, which I should mention that Joey has been a guest previously. We have dubbed him our Venture Brothers correspondent on that show. So now whenever we get Venture Brothers, we have the signal go up in the sky, and Joey is summoned. And as will be the
I
case,
did see it out my window and get on my butter glider and start flying, and then realized the recording probably wouldn't be for another couple of weeks, but...
Right, I assume you wait there like Michael Keaton in Batman Returns. Like you see the signal when you it reflects off.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, you're wearing a very sensible turtleneck while you're waiting.
It's
just
too
in your
hot.
study.
It's 100 goddamn degrees in this state.
That's true. You're just like really sweat. Like they better fucking put that signal up. I need to get this
exactly.
But you'll be coming back in July. There'll be another Venture Brothers episode that you'll be on. And we appreciate you being on that show, and especially on the main feed here, Joey. Thank you so much for adding your animation knowledge.
You are very welcome. It is a total delight to talk to you about cartoons, both of you.
Well, why don't you just tell people where they can find you on the internet if you wish to be found, Joey? Plug yourself.
Yes. You can find me on Blue Sky at RM Fezman. You can find me on Letterboxd at Joey Hamill. And if you live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, as I do, I work for the Dallas Children's Theater, which is a really phenomenal arts organization putting on incredible plays and musicals aimed at young people and their families. Beyond me loving animation, quality art for young people is a deep passion of mine. And so if you live in DFW, you should check out DCT. You can find us at www.dct.org to see upcoming details about our 25-26 season, which includes a world premiere holiday musical based on the picture books of Mo Willems, who is a goddamn superstar. So you parents out there listening, if you've got kids and you're in DFW, or if you just like quality theater and you're in DFW, come check out DCT. We're pretty fantastic.
Yeah, I love Mo Williams, especially like the offbeats and Sheep in the Big City.
Oh yeah, Codename
Love
Kids
that
Next
show.
Door was my lifeblood. He was
That's
the head
true,
writer
yes.
on that show for 5 seasons.
Fuck, I love that show.
I'm really hoping I get a chance to meet him as part of this world premiere. Fingers crossed. Knock on
Hell
wood.
yeah. Godspeed with that. But for our rinky-dink operation, you can follow us on whatever hell site you peruse. If we're there, we're at Cinema number 2 letter over there. And you can find me specifically on Blue Sky, but mainly Letterboxd as at Not the Who's Tommy.
Yeah, and for me, I pretty much you can just find me on Letterboxd. It is where I'm logging all these fucking Don Bluth movies. But yeah, follow me on there just at my name.
And for more of us, just to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts or other podcasting platforms. If you're listening on Top Film Society, why not listen to all the other great shows that are here on the network? And you can dig into the archives on our Podbean main feed for the past 9 seasons of Cinema to the Letter, and all the old double-edged double bill stuff is also there for you to peruse. And if nothing else, if you can't support us on the Patreon, that's cool. Money can be tight, even the $1 a month, it can be tight for some people, but the free way to help us out is to rate, review, or simply share the show out there to give us more visibility, have us escape from the rose bush and go into the thorn valley and truly evolve as podcasters and rats, mostly as rats. Brian and I are actually rats. That's the secret of this. We're very highly intelligent rats.
The secret of cinema? I don't know.
The
Secret of
secret of
NIMH.
C2L.
The secret of
Oh! That's what we called it until we decided to change it to cinema for better SEO purposes. But on that note, our next episode is going to be our end for new for the animation season. And we talked about Disney a lot on our previous episode, this episode, and we're going to do it next episode because we're covering Turning Red, the Disney Pixar film from 2022. Joey, in terms of especially Pixar, you mentioned how much you love them in general. You're a big fan of Turning Red?
Totally. Domi Shi feels to me like a huge step forward in like a new exciting crop of Pixar directors. And I loved Turning Red. I've only watched it the once since it came out, but I owe it another watch. I may do so in correspondence with your episode, just because I remember really loving it and its chaotic mid-2000s horny teen energy. I just remember thinking it was really good.
Yeah, but Brian, you excited to talk about this one, get into the Pixar of it all, especially their kind of modern era?
Yeah, especially since I also have only seen Turning Red the one time on Disney Plus because they didn't put it out in theaters initially, which I'm still frustrated by, and I will definitely mention many times because we'll talk about it. But I agree with you, Joey. Like, it feels like a real step in the right direction of, especially considering Pixar's, kind of boys club and all of that stuff. It feels like a good step forward, both in like a fresh new voice and also let more women and
she's a
just
co-director
make
on
animators.
Elio after
Right.
its overhaul, so you can go see her next movie in a few days or out now, depending on when this comes out.
It'll be in July, so either it would have been a surprise hit or maybe massively failed. We don't know
we'll
yet.
Find out.
We'll find out.
I will see it as soon as I'm able. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, well, we may talk about that as well, given it's
cool.
We'll be recording it like right after it comes out.
Oh, nice.
There's a bit of interesting context there.
Yeah, I'm very excited to rewatch it though. Like in all, just it was a movie I just remember being like so delightful. So yeah,
it's wonderful.
Yes, but that's for next time. Until then, everybody, just support single mice moms out there. They really need all the love and attention they can get.
What is a tractor if not the shark of the field? I mean, that's a great comparison.
it's true.